Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto Pokemon partner was Arceus. Before I start, please support for more amazing content, and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by Alakazoom and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. An alarm clock's blaring was silenced, almost before completing its first buzz. The blond boy whose hand lay upon its snooze button staring at the cracked ceiling above with a blank look upon his face. This was it. He had turned in for the night early, intending to be at his best on this most important of days. Instead, sleep eluded him, frightened off by discouraging thoughts that refused to let the boy be. Dejectedly, he had watched the light fade from the west-facing window of his bedroom as the sun set. The boy's thoughts circled as the seal-inscribed crystals the village of Konoha used for nightly illumination flickered to life, releasing the light stored the day prior. He roused from his torpor somewhat when he heard the sound of impacts on his door and windows accompanied by adolescent laughter. He had heard the sounds often enough to identify the act of petty vandalism. He stopped counting at 36. It wasn't any concern of his if someone wanted to waste perfectly good eggs. He lay there, eyes barely moving, breath shallow, looking for all intents and purposes like a man awaiting his final judgment. He still lay there when the sun rose to witness him lethargically silencing the unneeded reminder of his fate. This was the day of the Academy final exams. More specifically, his final exams. Prospective ninja were required to attend Konoha's academy for 5 years, most started at 7 or 8 years old, and graduated to genin at the age of 12 or 13. The boy had received permission to enter the academy early in light of the fact that he had no one to look after him, and nothing to occupy his time. He had entered at 5 years old, and he was now 12. This would be his third and final chance at passing the genin exam. Both of his prior attempts had been spectacular failures on the simple grounds that no matter what he did, he could never successfully make a simple bushin. He could manage Kawarimi and was, in his own humble opinion, a master with henge. But no matter how focused he was, no matter how hard he tried, every bushin he produced looked like it had been put through a wash and worn wet. Theoretically, he knew there was only a 1 in 3 chance of being asked to do the bushin for the ninjutsu portion of the test, but in practice he knew to expect the worst and hope for the best. He had learned long ago how futile hope could be. Leveraging himself out of bed, he went to the bathroom to begin his morning preparations. Not long after, he was eating his breakfast, 3 cups of instant ramen. He sighed, slightly mournful of the wasted eggs from last night. They would have been a pleasant addition to his typical diet of dirt cheap unspoilable food. After breakfast, he returned to the bathroom to brush his teeth. Gazing back from the mirror were his familiar azure eyes, set above a smallish nose, which itself perched above an expressive mouth which often was set in a massive grin. On his cheeks were 6 odd birthmarks, 3 straight lines each, forming what looked remarkably like whiskers. All this topped by a mess of hair such a bright yellow it could make a daffodil jealous. His outfit was just as distinctive as his face, although for a much simpler reason. It was orange. A bright, retina-searing orange jumpsuit with a white collar and blue accents to be specific. His mundane self-maintenance complete, Naruto Uzumaki, most hated child in the ninja village of Konoha, made his way to the front door. This sad, stained piece of second-hand lumber stood sentinel for all the years since he was granted this apartment by the third Hokage, the elderly leader of the village and closest thing the boy had to family in the world. He stood, hand on the doorknob for what felt like an eternity, pondering the simple barrier that separated their world from his. For all his life it seemed, there was an invisible and impenetrable wall between the world of the villagers and the world of Naruto Uzumaki. The world of the villagers was sunlit laughter and happy families. It was picnics in the park and friends to push each other on the swing. It was simple togetherness and complex competition between rival brothers. The world of Naruto Uzumaki was nothing remotely similar. It was taunting jeers and petty assaults. It was terrifying shadows and tears in the dark. Most of all, though, it was loneliness. Crippling, debilitating loneliness. And whenever those two worlds brushed each other, jagged sparks erupted. Sometimes, he struck those sparks intentionally. Pranks committed for a degree of restitution towards those who sought to hurt him, or simply for enjoyment and attention. Oftentimes these sparks turned back and burned him. Luckily, the masked ninja known as Umbu would almost always interfere before he was injured seriously. Assuming he hadn't managed to lose his pursuers on his own anyway, an act which he had grown rather talented in these past years. Most often he would simply retreat from that world. Holed up in his apartment, or an old forgotten training ground, he would practice his ninja techniques. Progress painstakingly dragged from his flesh using low-quality and often scavenged equipment. Using blood, sweat and even tears to hold the enemy at bay. Knowing that even as he did so, eventually the solitude would become too much. Those days he eagerly endured the scorn of that other world, simply to feel connected to someone else. Like the desperation of a starving man devouring food he knows to be poison, simply to make the pain recede for a time. Often when the hunger was sated, the toxic hatred he endured to do so left him worse than before. But always he would use these events to fuel his determination, to make his next training sessions harder, stronger, more focused. Someday they would see him for the ninja he was born to be. Someday he would make their world look at him and see not what he is, but what he will become. And all he has to do is make a stupid clone. Maybe Iruka-sensei was right when he said they broke the mold after he was born? Maybe that's why his clones all sucked. He smiled sadly at that thought. That argument wouldn't help him pass, and neither would standing here like a doorstop. He's a ninja in the making, damn it! Not the doorman at some crappy hotel. That thought firmly in place, Naruto strapped a weapon shop's worth of metaphorical steel to his spine, set his face into the oblivious smile that was as much a mask as any Umbu's porcelain visage, and strode out beyond the edges of his world and into the smell of eggs baking in the sun. After locking the door and promising to clean the silent sentry when he got home, he took off at full speed for the academy and the rest of his life. As usual, Naruto was the last one of his class to arrive. He strode towards his desk in the back of the classroom, brimming with artificial confidence. Neither Iruka-sensei nor Mizuki-sensei were present at the moment, so the prospective genin were chattering animatedly or otherwise passing time in their own manners. Shuji Akimichi was in his seat munching on what seemed to be a large breakfast bento. His parents probably made it for him as a good luck gesture, in typical Akimichi appetite fashion, of course. Beside him, Shikamaru and Nara snored quietly. Apparently even the last day of school and the start of their shinobi careers wasn't enough to motivate the slacker. Shino Aburame was sitting there. To be honest, Naruto couldn't tell in most cases if the boy was asleep or awake, let alone what he was thinking. Kiba Inuzuka was standing near one of the civilian girls boasting about his upcoming promotion, and how he would be top dog among the new genin. All Naruto could remember about the girl was that she hated him with a passion. He'd once picked up a pencil she dropped and returned it to her, only to watch her snap it in two and tell him it was contaminated by his stupid. Hinata Hyuga, the strange, dark girl with weird eyes, sat in the front corner of the room, on the opposite side of the door. He couldn't really tell what she was doing, aside from avoiding looking his way anytime he so much as glanced near her direction. It took him a long time to figure her out, but eventually he realized she was terrified of him. The few times they were assigned to spar as part of taijutsu class, she would start breathing heavily, and looking like she wanted to run far, far away. Naruto wasn't sure what he might have done to affect the girl in such a way, but he was sure he didn't like it. Unfortunately, between her hating him like most of the village and her being afraid of him, he was offered little reason to try changing things. Sakura Haruno, the bubblegum-haired object of his affections, was busy fighting with her former best friend, the blonde and popular Ino Yamanaka. Sadly, the object of their dispute was the target of their own romantic fantasies, Sasuke Uchiha. The dark-haired, coal-eyed boy was busy glaring at the front of the room, either trying to ignore the near-cat fight beside him or trying to ignite the chalkboard through sheer power of will. Or he was constipated, hard to tell really. The other students, civilian kids mostly, were sitting around talking in small groups. The subjects of discussion ranged from dread for the test itself to predictions on who would pass and be assigned to which teams, to age-old friends making pacts to not go all weird and crazy when they become powerful ninja. Naruto made his way to his own seat in the far corner of the classroom, studiously preventing his smile mask from slipping. Once there, he put his head on his arms and decided to feign sleep, hoping none of the other students would see fit to bother him. A bit less than 10 minutes passed in this manner before the sliding door opened and the two Chunin teachers entered. Iruka Umino was a kind man, hardly what one would expect in your average ninja. He was strict, and wanted his students to excel no matter what. Naruto knew him as one of the very few who were willing to help when he had a problem, and for that he had the boys' respect. Mizuki, however, was much less generous towards his students. When he trained the students, he preached the merits of personal strength. A ninja, in his view, had to stand on their own if they wanted to survive, while Iruka often professed that teamwork was the better route. Both philosophies had their merits, so such debates weren't particularly discouraged. The teachers moved to their standard morning positions, Mizuki lounging in a chair near the chalkboard, and Iruka in the center of the student-dubbed lecture path. Iruka tended to pace while teaching, and Naruto would be amazed if they hadn't had to replace any of the flooring in the years since he had started his career. Iruka cleared his throat, attempting to get his class attention. After a few moments he tried again. The only response he received was a derisive chuckle from the corner Mizuki was in. With a sigh, Iruka snapped his fingers, and in a flash of purple light there was a third figure standing at Iruka's side. After a nod from Iruka, the purple creature began to emit a whistling noise, warning the more astute students of what was about to occur. Less than a second after the whistling began, an eruption of noise battered those students who hadn't noticed the telltale warning into submission. Explode! Irika's Pokemon announced the start of class with a window-shaking roar. Thank you, Irika said, nodding to his inhuman partner. Now that I have your attention, he began turning his attention back to the class. The Pokemon he had partnered with since his own entry into the ninja ranks vanished with another ray of purple light, which jumped into the strange tattoo on his arm. As you all know, today is the graduation exam. You will be tested on all of the criteria you've learned these past years, and if you score well enough you will be permitted to attempt to gain a Pokemon partner. Those of you who do not, will be permitted to try again next year, after attending another year of schooling of course. Here he grinned at the chorus of groans coming from the lower-ranking members of class. I must remind you, however, that those who do not take their ninja studies seriously enough will not be allowed to remain in the academy indefinitely. You are only permitted 3 attempts at the final exam, so I suggest all of you redouble your efforts in the future regardless of whether that future is back here, or hopefully in your own genin teams. What happens if we fail 3 times? Asked a civilian boy named Hayagawa. Naruto flinched almost imperceptibly. Every time the subject came up, someone would ask that question. Naruto could only take solace that this time it wasn't someone trying to rub it in his face. Hayagawa had scores almost as bad as Naruto. In fact, he would be dead last, if Naruto could just manage that stupid clone jutsu. Irika sighed before answering. If a student fails the academy exam 3 times, it is assumed that further ninja training is unlikely to improve on their abilities. In that circumstance, the former student is removed from the curriculum and taken to have a seal applied. Hinata paled. Seals, especially those applied without the bearer's consent, were a sickening reality to the kind would-be heiress. The purpose of this seal is twofold. First, it blocks the majority of the recipient's chakra, reducing them to civilian levels so that they cannot become a threat to the village as a whole on their own. And second, it triggers a paralyzing effect if the bearer attempts to betray Konoha to its enemies. It is my sincerest hope that none of the students that pass through my classroom ever face that fate. I have dedicated my life to the education of tomorrow's ninja legends, and I know you will all make me proud even if you take a year or 2 longer to do it than I'd like. He finished with a smile, momentarily locking eyes with Naruto as he swept his gaze across the classroom. Now, if there are no more questions, we'll begin the exams. The following hours were spent in exhaustive testing. A written test to prove theoretical knowledge and basic understanding of common ninja concepts. Taijutsu spars against the teachers to assess their techniques. Accuracy tests with both kunai and shuriken. And finally, after those who couldn't pass the requisite scores on those had been weeded out, the students were brought back into the classroom for the final stage of the exam. Alright students, this will be the last and most important phase of the examination, ninjutsu. Irika held up a small tissue box. In this are slips of paper listing the 3 academy techniques. You will be called one at a time into the testing room to demonstrate the jutsu you pull from it. While Mizuki-sensei and I are away, the rest of you may do as you wish, as long as it is quiet and not disruptive to the other classes. If, once you complete your assigned jutsu correctly, you are given a passing grade overall, you will be given one of these. Irika held up an iridescent metal sheet. It was rectangular, 1 inch or so thick, and about as long as his forearm on its long side, and about half that on its shorter side. It bore an oddly flowing engraving of many Pokemon species on it. These are known as the plates of Arceus, and will be the focus of your day tomorrow. I strongly suggest you take this very seriously. What you do, what you say, even what you think about, will all affect which Pokemon partner you receive. You all know what's expected of you tomorrow, so I don't want to see any of you here. Stay home and spend the day in contemplation, or you may find yourself with an incompatible partner. I must remind you, there are no second chances. Once you are paired with a Pokemon, it is your partner for life. Those of you who receive a plate will be contacted by Umbu the day after tomorrow to escort you to the graduation ceremony. Make sure you bring the plate with you. No plate, no headband. That is all. If there are no questions, we will proceed with the final testing. Aside from a few dismissive snorts from some of the students when he spoke about Arceus, the class listened intently to his instructions. A minute later, when no one spoke up, Irika continued. Very well, the order of testing will follow class rank, from highest grade to lowest. Once your test is complete, you are free to leave, and I hope to see you all in 2 days' time. Sasuke Uchiha, please come with me. You're first. Sasuke grunted and strode from the room, his cheering fangirls already declaring his imminent victory. Immediately followed by Sakura and Ino arguing about whose cheering was more encouraging for their Sasuke-kun. Naruto placed his head back on his arms and settled in to wait. It was bound to be a long day. A few hours later, he was standing in the testing room with both Irika and Mizuki staring at him as he trembled, staring at the paper in his hand. Clear as day it read, Bushin no Jutsu. Crumpling it in frustration, he threw it onto the desk in front of his teachers. Fine. He growled, you want a clone? I'll give you the best damn clone you ever seen. Naruto immediately began gathering chakra, so much it was faintly visible to the eye. Iruka closed his eyes and sighed. He'd hoped the boy would be able to pass this time. There was only a 1 in 3 chance of the clone jutsu being picked after all, and Naruto deserved a lucky break more than just about anyone. Next to him, unseen by Iruka and unnoticed by Naruto, Mizuki smirked confidently. After a couple moments of chakra channeling, Naruto squeezed his eyes shut and cried out Bushin no Jutsu. He felt his focus was perfect, his visualization was spot on, and he channeled enough chakra to almost blind his unseen admirer as she used her dijutsu to spy on this most important of events, in her mind anyway. He was confident that he had finally managed it, the clone. He would not fail this time. All he had to do was open his eyes and see Iruka's happy grin, but for some reason, moving those 2 thin pieces of skin felt like the heaviest weight he had ever lifted. And when he saw the sorrow in his teacher's eyes, he knew he had failed. Again. He moved his gaze forlornly to the side where his clones were to have materialized, only to catch sight of a grayish-orange blob sprawled on the floor. It looked like the 3 clones he had attempted to produce got mangled and combined in some horrible accident. I'm truly sorry, Naruto, Iruka said, but I simply cannot pass you. That clone isn't even really a clone, it looks more like something out of a bad horror movie. I don't know, Iruka, began Mizuki. Something like that might actually be useful in the right circumstances. The shock value alone might help the kid survive in a genin-level fight, you know? Besides, it's not like we want the poor kid to get sealed. I say we pass him anyway. We can't do that, Iruka responded. I will not send an unprepared student out to die, nor will I lie to the Hokage about the results of the test. Naruto, I'm sorry. I have no doubt that you'd have succeeded marvelously on any other jutsu, but I cannot in good conscience make an exception. Not for you, and not for any of the other students that failed this year. I understand, Naruto replied in a voice so empty of emotion Iruka winced. Hey, I guess I'll see you around, Iruka-sensei? Yeah, we'll get some ramen at Ichiraku's, okay? Iruka promised. Naruto waved unenthusiastically in reply and left the room, closing the door silently behind him. Iruka stared after the boy for a while, before being broken from his thoughts by his co-teacher. Well, now that mess is finished, I'm gonna go get smashed. Yay for semester breaks, right man? Mizuki proclaimed. Yeah, Iruka sighed. But there's still a ton of paperwork to get finished before the graduation ceremony. No rest for the wicked, I suppose. He cast a glance towards the door with a pensive expression. Bah, you made the right call. If we'd have done it my way, no doubt the Hokage would have had us in Ibiki's office before we could blink if he were feeling generous anyway. Otherwise, Anko's. Both men shivered a moment at that thought. Well, my more professional protege, Mizuki continued after a moment. Since one of us needs to finish said paperwork, and we both know I'll just screw it up. Intentionally interjected Iruka. I'm hurt that you would say such things, Mizuki replied in a sad tone. But regardless, have fun, Iruka-sensei, Mizuki called as he strode from the room chuckling. Naruto paced down the hallway towards the exit, obliviously passing by the room hiding the tear-streaked Hyuga girl. His thoughts were a tangle. His whole life, the only real road that seemed open to him was becoming a ninja, and now that road seemed to have collapsed into a yawning chasm. All the hopes, dreams, and distant ambitions he'd carved into his heart and mind over the years were firmly trapped on the other side. If only there were another way to become a ninja. Maybe he could petition the Hokage for a retest? No, that would never work, and with the school year just ending, the old man would be so swamped with paperwork Naruto would be lucky to see him within a week. By that time he would be the owner of a shiny new seal, and the conversation would be more likely to revolve around suggestions for what he should do with his life, given the new limitations he would be under. Naruto exited the school, into the far too cheerful light of the sun. He glared at it a moment, childishly offended that it could be so inconsiderate of his depressed thoughts, then moved to the swing hanging under the shade of the nearby tree. It was the only tree in the front yard of the school, and it meant a lot to him. This was where he came to think when his classes were going bad, this was where he pondered the mystery of female emotion. Although the tree had yet to help him explain why Sakura fawned over the cold Uchiha when Naruto had done his very best to be her own personal son, literally in one unfortunate and painful instance. This was also where he decided he was destined for greatness. He and the rest of the class had just learned about the Kawarimi no Jutsu, and they were in the front yard of the school practicing that day, due to a large-scale jutsu display for the last year students being held in the normal training area behind the school. The students were told to visualize their destination, and charge as much chakra as they were able, then with hand signs and a shout of Kawarimi no Jutsu poof, they would be where they wanted, leaving a mysteriously appearing log in their place. This happened in Naruto's third year at the academy, which would have been around the time Sakura-chan and the others of his current class were just starting their first. Well, Naruto did as instructed, but instead of finding himself appearing next to the teacher on the opposite side of the yard, he found himself in a hole in the ground which immediately collapsed, burying him up to his shoulders in the wet dirt. One arm was trapped in the inadvertent burial, and it took him almost an hour to dig his way free and another 30 minutes to make his way back to the school. A trip which would have taken longer had he not been stopped and escorted via Shunshin by one of the Umbu dispatched to find him. When he arrived at the school, he was shocked to see an entire living tree had appeared in the spot he had vacated. Sandaimjiji was standing there staring at it with a puzzled expression that would have made Naruto erupt into laughter had he not been tired and dirty from his own confusing experience. The Hokage had asked what happened and explained that Naruto used too much chakra and so threw off his technique. Naruto reduced his chakra use the next time and hadn't had that particular mistake happen since. He had tried to do the same with his Bushin technique, just in case it suffered from a similar issue, but no matter how little chakra he used, they all came out wrong. Naruto placed his hand on the tree, the one tangible piece of evidence that he was more than just a failure. Incontrovertible proof that he was special in some way. He rested his head against it, and fought back the tears that threatened to fall. He couldn't afford to be seen as weak. Not in this world of the villager's creation. Naruto had no idea how long he had stood there, palm and forehead pressed against the tree hard enough to sting, when a voice called out to him. "He's not hard on you because he hates you, you know." Naruto turned to see Mizuki-sensei approach from the school doorway. "He wants to protect you, keep you safe. You're like the little brother he never had, I think." Naruto turned back to the tree without replying. Mizuki walked up next to him, staring up through the branches at the sun crawling its way slowly towards the west. They stood that way for a while before Mizuki spoke again, his voice somber. "I never really understood the whole protecting everyone thing. It's always been my belief that the best way for someone to be safe is for them to get strong. Teach them to stand on their own and protect themselves, you know? Like that old saying about fishing, I mean. Except with fighting, because fishing is boring," Mizuki chuckled. "But it's hard to get strong as a civilian, and it's not like the jerks in this village will lift a finger to help you, eh?" Naruto scowled towards the tree in response. "Tell me, Naruto, how much do you want to be strong? How far will you go to protect yourself?" Naruto responded, still scowling. "I will get strong. I will protect not only me, but all the people I care about too. I don't care if I'm sealed, and I don't care if I'm a civilian. I will become Hokage someday. And there's no one in this village that's gonna stop me." Naruto was barely whispering the words, but the intensity in his words made them seem all the louder. Mizuki hummed to himself, as if considering something. "Well, kid, I guess I got no choice but to tell you then." He smirked at Naruto's puzzled look. "There's a secret test for those who fail the exam for the third time, but it can only be issued by one of the student's instructors in private." "Wait, if that's true, then why didn't Iruka-sensei tell me about it?" Naruto responded in a surprising show of logic. "Well, to be honest, I don't know," Mizuki shrugged. "But there's a fair chance he just doesn't know about it. After all, it is pretty rare for someone to flunk out all 3 times, no offense of course." "I guess that makes sense," Naruto conceded. "So, what do I have to do to pass this super secret test, sensei?" he asked, eyes sparkling with hope once again. Mizuki knelt next to Naruto, so their faces were inches apart, and his voice dropped to a whisper. "That's just it, this is right up your alley, kid. If anyone in the entire school can pull it off, you can. What you need to do is sneak into the Hokage's tower and borrow the scroll of forbidden sealing. I gotta warn you though, I can't tell anyone why you're doing this or the test is void. You gotta get in, and get out, on your own without getting caught." At Naruto's wide-eyed stare he clarified. "This is a Chunin rank mission, kid. Its purpose is to test your infiltration and information acquisition skills. Genin aren't expected to have any ability in those areas, you know. That's more espionage-oriented Chunin and special jounin stuff. These secret tests are designed to be tough. Their purpose is to make sure that we don't accidentally lose a ninja with valuable skills because of a little quirk like your clone issues." Naruto nodded his understanding and Mizuki continued, "Now, once you have the scroll, you gotta get to the rendezvous point written here." He handed Naruto a folded piece of paper. "Make sure you destroy that once you know where to go. Ninja never leave evidence behind. When you reach the drop-off point, wait for me to come get you. I'll score you based on speed, stealth, time it takes for an alert to sound, and how long it takes them to figure out who took the scroll. All of these are important concerns for an espionage operation." He looked straight into Naruto's eyes. "If you can score high enough on this to bring your total score to passing, you will be issued an Arceus plate tonight, and graduate with your classmates at the ceremony." But what if I can't get enough points to make up for my ninjutsu score? Naruto asked. Mizuki rocked back on his heels a moment to think. Tell you what, just cause Iruka likes you, and I want to see him cheer you on at the ceremony, I'll make you a deal. If you can learn a jutsu from the scroll and demonstrate it for me when I arrive to grade you, I'll change your ninjutsu score to match whatever you earn demonstrating the new one. How's that sound? Mizuki leaned forward again and offered his hand to the small boy. Naruto stared at his sensei, awed at the generosity of the offer. I say you got a deal, he shouted, grasping the offered hand and shaking it vigorously. I'll ace this test. I'll do so good they'll have to invent a new letter above a database. Good to hear it, Mizuki replied with a grin. He gestured to the piece of paper in Naruto's hand. I'll meet you there at let's say midnight, that'll give you some time to earn that extra credit. Plus, if you can get the scroll and they don't even realize it's gone until then, I think that would qualify you for that perfect score you want. He stood and brushed off his pants briskly. Well, if you're all set and don't have any more questions, I have a date with a hot lil lady I call Sake. That said, Mizuki vanished in a swirl of leaves. Naruto grinned in anticipation as he set off like a shot for his apartment. He had gear to collect for this ultimate test. This time he swore to himself, he would pass no matter what it took. Nothing would stop him. Nothing would delay him, while almost nothing, he amended as he approached his door. He had a promise to keep, and it would be a grave disservice to abandon door in his time of need. Later that night, Iruka was just finishing up the last of his end-of-the-year paperwork. As he stacked the forms in his arm, planning to haul them down to the school's administration office for proper filing, he spotted the wadded-up piece of paper Naruto hurled at the desk earlier. Sighing to himself for what seemed like the 100th time that day, he gathered the offending scrap, glaring at it with what anger he could hold for such an object. Why did you have to be Bushin? He demanded. Is it too much to ask for one little thing to go Naruto's way for once? Unsurprisingly, he received no response. Resisting an immature urge to just burn the thing, he decided to return it to the box for use in the future. He sent a bit of chakra into the slip of paper, using a teacher's jutsu he'd learned over the years to repair paperwork damaged by anything from stray jutsu and kunai to being partially consumed by wild animals. Ninjutsu were surprisingly innovative when it came to avoiding homework, and most of the academy's teachers had no pity for unimaginative excuses. There was actually a top 10 list in the teacher's lounge of best excuses ever used. Currently number 1 was Tsunade's "My granddad accidentally turned it into a tree." Most surprising is the fact that it was apparently true, if one were to judge by the apology note pinned next to it signed by Hashirama Senju. Iruka frowned when the paper in his hands resisted for a few seconds, before releasing a tiny burst of chakra and unfolding itself properly. His eyes went wide as he stared. The words Henj no Jutsu emblazoned across it. As he stared at the words, trying to figure out how Naruto could have confused one technique for the other, he heard a loud slam and pounding footsteps. Turning to the doorway, he watched it fly open to reveal a haggard-looking Kurenai Yuhi. Kurenai had been a fellow teacher in the academy, teaching the 4th grade students until just a year ago. After teaching the prior year's class, she declared her intention to leave the academy and attain her juninship to become a genin team sensei. Iruka knew from personal experience that the young Hyuga heiress had factored into the decision, both because of Kurenai's previous involvement with the girl, and because she had consulted him in regards to the best manner to request the Hokage give her the girl as a student. Personally, he hoped she got the team she chose. He believed it would be good both for the genin involved and Kurenai herself. Ah yes, Kurenai-san? Was there something you need? He asked absently, mind still tangling with the puzzle in his hand. Iruka-san, Kurenai began, almost out of breath from her swift arrival. The Hokage summoned all active ninja to the tower. Damn. I'll head right there, Iruka interrupted, dropping the stack of files on the desk. Don't bother, Kurenai continued, stopping Iruka mid-stride. He made his announcement already. I got here as fast as I could. It was about Naruto. He stole the scroll of forbidden seals. Every ninja in the village is out looking for him. Iruka's eyes shot wide for a moment, before, as if by magic, the pieces to his puzzle clicked into place. A glare of anger so intense settled onto the kind Chunin's face that Kurenai unconsciously stepped away. Mizuki, he growled, his hands spasming closed and crushing the paper once again. He looked into Kurenai's eyes a moment, lost in thought. Go to the Hokage, he ordered, tell him Naruto's being used. Mizuki must have planned to make Naruto fail, then use him to get the scroll. Kurenai nodded, ignoring the fact that she outranked the teacher. What are you going to do? She inquired. Mizuki's a man of habit. There are only so many places he would choose to meet Naruto, and there's no way he would have left himself having to search for him beside the rest of the village. Naruto's too good at evading capture to leave something like this up to chance. And when you find him? I plan to beat him into the dirt, then bring him back for Ibiki or maybe Anko. He grinned maliciously at the jounin when he mentioned her friend. No one hurts my students, Irika swore before vanishing in a shunshin. Kurenai stared at the place. He stood a moment more before turning and rushing from the room as fast as she could. On her way back to the Hokage's tower, she wondered if Irika could handle Mizuki on his own, and if he could, how much of the possible traitor would be left afterward. Naruto sat in a clearing in a training ground just outside of Konoha proper. Apparently it was used for some kind of bandit rescue or other form of forced entry training, judging from the much battered cabin that stood nearby. He was exhausted but deliriously happy. He had managed to learn one jutsu from the scroll, and it was a Bushin type to boot. No way would anyone be able to deny his graduation now. All he had to do was wait for Mizuki-sensei to get here, and he'd be a genin in no time. As he plopped onto his back to rest, he reflected on the course of the day since accepting the secret test. Flashback. When he reached his apartment, Naruto fulfilled his promise to Dor and spent the next hour scrubbing it clean of eggy residue. During this time he devised his plan of attack. He knew Sarutobi generally took a lunch break from his dreaded paperwork around the end of the academy's school day. More often than not he went out to lunch with Konohamaru, his grandson. The young boy usually picked the restaurant, and the Hokage made sure to invite Naruto along if they went anywhere he felt comfortable entering. Generally, this meant only Ichiraku's. He was fairly certain that despite the extra work piling on his desk due to the end of school, that the Hokage's office would be empty at that time, and would likely remain that way for at least an hour. Konohamaru often rambled on about how his day went, what cool new things he learned, and threats to take the hat by force someday soon. As for how to get into the room and past any guards, Naruto had long ago learned a secret way in. A path through ventilation ducts he had discovered while trying to avoid a less than tolerant secretary some time back. Sarutobi was unhappy with him for finding a flaw in his security, but once Naruto had revealed it to him and escorted a smallish monkey summoned through it, he'd agreed to allow the boy this one covert path to him, adding a ceiling array to the entrance and exit that wouldn't allow anyone but the boy through. His only stipulation was that Naruto only use it in a true emergency. Well, if his last chance at graduation didn't qualify as an emergency, he didn't want to encounter any problems that did. Nearly an hour and a half of frantic searching later, and Naruto had finally located his target. Somehow, the Hokage had managed to stuff it into a drawer not even a quarter the size of the scroll itself. Naruto decided that if the opportunity ever presented itself, he really had to learn some of this sealing stuff. Unfortunately for him, as he was trying to fit the giant scroll into the vents so he could finally leave, the Hokage himself appeared via Shunshin. He immediately went on alert, looking around angrily until he spotted Naruto with his prize. "Naruto-kun, what on earth are you doing?" the old man asked. Naruto, remembering what Mizuki said about evidence, and sounding alarms, and about having to keep the test a secret, or it not counting, did the only thing he could think to do. "Sorry, Gigi," Naruto apologized, forming a sign and charging chakra. The Hokage frowned sadly and prepared to take the boy down and get some answers. "Oroike no Jutsu." Only to collapse in a spray of nose-originated blood as Naruto unleashed his first, and arguably most dangerous, often to himself if a kunoichi is near, personally created jutsu. Rolling the unconscious man onto his belly so he wouldn't drown in his own blood, Naruto was struck by an idea. Strapping the scroll to his back, he hinged into the Hokage, grabbed the worn pipe from the desk and strolled out the door. "Hokage-sama?" yelped the secretary as she hurried over, straightening her musk clothing. "I thought you were out to lunch." Naruto looked over the secretary a moment, then past her to the Chunin, pointedly staring out a window that had no view worth watching. Don't mind me," he replied in Sarutobi's voice. "I just forgot my pipe and came back for it. Nothing worth noting, I'm sure. Do carry on." Naruto as Sarutobi walked out of the building, chuckling for more than one reason. A short time later, and Naruto was making full speed for the rendezvous. A quick glance at the sun, which was coming close to setting, revealed he had more than a few hours to get his new jutsu down. It might be a bit of a rush, but he swore he would do it. No matter what. Flashback end. The rapid pounding of footsteps brought Naruto to his feet in a rush. The boy was literally bouncing in place with eagerness to see Mizuki and pass his test. His disappointment was sharp when instead Irika slid to a stop in front of him. "Does this mean I failed the test?" Naruto asked sadly. "Naruto, do you know where Mizuki is?" Irika demanded. "I don't know what he told you, but that scroll should never have been removed from the Hokage's office. This is no test, this is treason." Irika swept his eyes around frantically, trying to watch everywhere at once. What? What do you mean there's no test? Mizuki-sensei told me. Naruto trailed off, realization dawning on him. He's like everyone else, isn't he? He asked quietly, not really expecting an answer. I'm hurt that you would think so little of me, Naruto, called out a sinister voice from the shadowed woods. I did ask what you were willing to do to become strong, didn't I? And then I gave you a way to do it. You can't honestly tell me those pathetic villagers would even consider doing something like that. Mizuki! Irika yelled, still glaring around. Show yourself. What's this all about? Why would you do something like this? Why? Isn't it obvious, Irika? This is about power. I'm tired of being on the low end of the strength scale in this village. I'm tired of teaching stupid brats who have less potential in their whole bodies than I do in a single finger. I'm tired of waiting for this damn village to recognize my greatness. I'll force them to see my power, and Orochimaru-sama has promised to help me. All I need is that scroll to pay my tuition, so to say, and he'll teach me everything I need to know. He even offered to let me stand with him when he comes back to burn this place to the ground. Malevolent laughter filled the woods around them for a moment. Naruto, the voice continued when its mirth had faded. Give me the scroll, and I'll bring you with me. We can both serve Orochimaru-sama. Think about it, no more villagers to harass you, no more living in that dump you call a home, no more of this sick, disgusting village. I'm willing to keep my promise of power if you're willing to complete your mission. Remember, the test only ends with you a ninja when you give the scroll to me. Don't listen to him, Naruto, Irika commanded. He's just trying to manipulate you. He'll kill you the second he doesn't need you anymore. Naruto looked from Irika to the woods, worry and fear clearly evident in his posture and expression. Dark chuckles came from the woods around them again. If that were true, I'd just kill him now. Even I can see how exhausted he must be from all that training. It'd hardly be difficult right now. I certainly doubt a soft desk ninja like you would be able to stop me, Irika. In fact, I bet I could kill you both before you even know where I am. But I'm a generous person, so I think I'll sweeten the deal for you, Naruto. If you want, I'll tell you why the village hates you so much. Why they all want to keep you weak. The secret's so big no one is allowed to even whisper it in Konoha. Well? Do you want to hear it, kid? No. Mizuki, you wouldn't dare. Irika cried out in surprise. If you say it, you'll be executed. Naruto stared at his visible teacher in shock. Irika knew? He knew all this time? All the pain Naruto had suffered, and the answer was as close to him as his own teacher, and Irika never told him? You're right, Irika. I wouldn't want to get executed twice. On top of the treason and all, I guess that just means I can't get caught. The hidden man laughed again. You want to know the secret, Naruto? Fine. The secret is, you are the Kyuubi no Yuko. All the evil that beast committed stains your very soul. Your claws, your teeth, you killed all those people who were lost that day you were born. Yondaime died trying to destroy you. But you still exist, and the village wants you dead? Naruto felt his heart stop at those words. Suddenly 1,000 barely heard insults made sense. Fox brat, demon, monster. He fell to his knees in a daze. The forest seemed to be spinning around him, as if the world itself was trying to reject him. No, Irika rebutted. Naruto's got that thing locked inside him. That much is true. But he's no more the Kyuubi than I am. Distantly Naruto heard Irika's denial, but everything seemed to be coming from so far away like it didn't matter anymore. Oh? Well, in that case I'll just have to kill you both. Mizuki screamed, charging forward from behind Naruto's unresponsive form, an already flying windmill shuriken leading the way. The next sensation Naruto felt wasn't a burning pain, nor the slicing of steel through flesh. Naruto felt like he was flying. He was puzzled by the experience until he hit the ground hard, the impact knocking the air from his lungs. Irika had grabbed Naruto by the back of his jumpsuit and launched him to safety while staying himself and bashing the giant throwing star out of the air with the other arm. Unfortunately for Irika, the razor-sharp edge of the weapon ripped a long gash along his upper arm. Irika grabbed the wound, wincing in pain before being forced to dodge from the rapidly approaching Mizuki. The traitorous Nin was wielding his second shuriken as if it were a buzzsaw, slashing and swiping with it almost recklessly. Why would you help that damn demon? The treacherous ninja exclaimed. Why the hell would you save the monster that killed your parents? The Yondaime. Everyone. Irika darted forward when his opponent's wild swing left him overbalanced momentarily, and delivered a bruising kick to the gut, knocking him away. Because it's like I said, Irika replied. Naruto is not the demon fox. He's one of my precious students. And anyone who wants to hurt my students will do so over my dead body. Irika drew a pair of kunai and charged at Mizuki, with a cry of now, explode. From the woods surrounding the embattled ninja a familiar whistling arose, followed immediately by a bone-shaking call. EXXBLOE. Naruto was forced to cover his ears as the sound continued unabated, a constant whistle underscoring the ever-increasing call. Shit! Mizuki cursed, immediately understanding the unorthodox attack as a call for aid. Scolipede! Find that thing and kill it! He ordered as the large insected Pokemon appeared in a flash of reddish light. The Scolipede cried out its name in reply and charged off into the brush in search of the hidden Pokemon noisemaker. It's over, Mizuki! Iruka proclaimed, somehow seemingly unaffected by the constant clamor around him. Umbu will be here in minutes. Your only options are peaceful surrender or painful capture. Naruto was transfixed as the battle between the two ninja continued, twin kunai against giant shuriken. He was confused as to why Iruka would go so far for him. Sure, he was a damn good teacher, but how many teachers would get in a fight to the death for their students? Meanwhile, Iruka was taking full advantage of the disorienting effect Exploud's call was having on Mizuki, pushing the traitor ninja onto his heels time and again. Iruka seemed to have every advantage for a short, while right until Exploud's alarm choked off into a hiccuping warble. Looks like my pet found yours, Mizuki gloated with a cruel expression. I wonder how long it'll be before Scolipede's venom eats it away from the inside, Iruka unconsciously darted his eyes towards where he knew Exploud would be fighting against his toxic adversary. Such distraction would be dangerous in any battle between ninja, but against an opponent who knows it's coming, even a moment's inattention can prove deadly. Unfortunately for Iruka, Mizuki knew him well enough to be such an opponent. The instant his eyes moved, Mizuki stopped the spinning blades of his shuriken, bringing both hands to the central ring he grabbed and twisted. With an almost silent click, the blades came apart in two sections, forming a pair of large knives with a blade pointing forward and back from the grip. Bringing his extended arm back to position in a slash across his body, he managed to score a deep wound across Iruka's chest. Only the loyal teacher's quick reflexes prevented the swing from removing his head. Mizuki anticipated this reaction, however, and was already charging forward, punching with the opposite blade. Iruka spun away and, instead of being disemboweled, merely felt the blade slice through his vest and scratch a thin line across his abdomen. He jumped away, but was again anticipated as the first dagger sliced towards his extended leg, so that the force of Iruka's own leap aided in the strike, dragging him up along the blade and cutting a shallow but freely bleeding wound from his knee nearly to his ankle. Iruka landed hard, and collapsed, grabbing his wounded leg and trying to staunch the blood flowing out. I gotta admit, you gave me a lot better a workout than I expected, Iruka, Mizuki stated. But I'm afraid I gotta cut this little party short. I sure didn't bring near enough sake for me, you, the brat, and all the umbu that are likely to find us before too long. In fact, I'm not sure I brought enough for just me. And since it's rude for the host to hog all the drinks, I guess I just gotta end this little get-together. Oh well. He smiled his twisted grin again. Oh, and don't worry about your precious student, I'll be sure to kill him just like you want. Right over your dead body. Just as Mizuki was about to stab into Iruka, a large and unwieldy object plowed into him from the side, sending him tumbling end over end. After a moment's panicky repositioning so as to not kill himself with his own blades, he rolled to his feet, settling into a ready stance. Getting impatient, Naruto? I was just about to get to you. Or did you finally decide to accept my offer? You're a fool if you think I'll go anywhere with you, the boy stated boldly. You already told me you were going to kill me. Why should I trust you? Humph. The traitor grunted in return. As if this village has any better plan for you. At least I'd kill you clean. Better than leaving you to waste away in some dumpster for the rest of your miserable life. Maybe, Naruto conceded. But I don't plan on wasting away anywhere. I trust Iruka-sensei when he says I'm precious to him. I trust Iruka-sensei when he says I'm not Kyuubi. I trust Sarutobijiji when he promised to help me become a ninja however he can. And if I have to go through this village one person at a time and prove I'm not a monster, prove I'm not a demon, prove I'm not Kyuubi, then that's what I'll do. I'll prove to all of them. I will protect this village, and all of its people, from traitors like you. And by the time I'm done, they'll be begging me to be Hokage. Databeo. Lovely speech, Naruto, Mizuki yawned, covering his mouth with one hand, and almost stabbing himself on the unusual weapon in the process. But it takes more than pretty words to make things like that happen, you know. Naruto nodded in response. I know, and I still have a test to pass. Don't I, Mizuki-sensei? The traitor cocked an eyebrow at that comment. I delivered the scroll as ordered. So, what would you score me for that? Naruto asked, challenge ringing clearly in his words. Mizuki glanced at the object that struck him, identifying it as the scroll of forbidden seals, and chuckled a bit. Well, kid, Based on the criteria I named, I'd have given you a B+, but taking out a Kage in the process, that bumps you to an A+ easily. Not that it'll do you any good when you're dead, but at least you'll know you did something right before you go, you know? Iruka was staring at Naruto in shock. Taking out a Kage? What the hell did he miss today? Naruto nodded again. Then I guess that just leaves one thing to do. I'm ready for my ninjutsu evaluation. What do you say we make it a combat test? That sound appropriate, sensei? Anytime you're ready, Fox Brat. Naruto's hands came up in a cross-shaped sign. Try not to die before you give me my grade. I'd hate to lose my chance to become a genin because you got weak on me. Naruto commented to Mizuki's ire. Kage Bushin no Jutsu. A cloud of chakra smoke filled the area, blinding all three for a long second before revealing a veritable army of identical figures. How's this? The group roared. Is this a passing grade or what? Mizuki looked around at the impossible event unfolding before his eyes. He swallowed heavily. He had always excelled at one-on-one combat, but against a horde this size, he knew it was a bad day to leave the bar. Well then, if you aren't gonna say anything, then here we come. In a rush of orange and yellow, the grand melee beatdown of the traitor Mizuki began in earnest. The Narutos were just sad that he didn't give them their extra credit before he passed out from the pain. Minutes later, Naruto and Iruka were the only conscious beings in the clearing. Iruka had bound his wounds to the best of his ability, then tied Mizuki up, with no regard to the man's comfort, should he awake. So Naruto began, I really have the Kyuubi stuck inside me, huh? I'm afraid so, Naruto, his teacher replied. You always have though, so don't think it changes anything about you. You just know about it now. Why was it such a secret anyway? And not even a good one. Was I the only person who didn't know? I don't know. That's probably something you'll have to talk over with Hokage-sama. He's the one who made the law forbidding its discussion after all. Ah man. Naruto groaned, and after all that effort, the stupid test was a total lie. Mizuki did lie to you, Naruto, but that doesn't mean. Iruka was interrupted by an odd whistling coming from the woods nearby, as Exploud staggered out. The purple Pokemon had a number of puncture wounds from its battle, and the skin surrounding the wounds was starting to turn gray around the edges. Exploud! Iruka cried, damn, I need to get him medical help. Naruto, stay with Mizuki until the Umbu get here. Naruto waved a half-hearted affirmation as Iruka lifted the small but bulky Pokemon into his arms and shot off into the night towards the village. When the Umbu arrived, Naruto was sitting near Mizuki looking dejected and poking the unconscious man with a stick. Uzumaki-san? One of the Umbu inquired in a feminine voice. The boy nodded without looking up. Very well. My comrades will take the traitor to the TNI division holding cells. My orders are to bring you and the scroll to the Hokage at once. Naruto stood without saying a word, and passed the scroll over to the woman. She meanwhile was feeling decidedly unsettled. Naruto Uzumaki was never quiet, and never this still. A glance at her team and their tense postures revealed their own apprehension. One had even tried to dispel, in case of a genjutsu. I'm ready to go now, Umbu-san, he said in a subdued voice. The woman swallowed her concern. There was something wrong with the boy, that much was certain. But if anyone could set the boy to rights, it would be the venerable Sandaime. Very well then, let us be off, she replied, before taking them both away in a swirl of leaves. Hiruzen Sarutobi inhaled deeply from his ever-present pipe. The nerve-soothing herbs within sometimes seemed to be the only thing keeping the aged Hokage going. Sadly, this was shaping up to be one of those days. After the hectic events of the previous night, and the late debriefing of Naruto. He was hesitant to use the term interrogation, but it nearly reached that point simply from sheer desperation when faced with the listless reactions. He had settled in for one of the least restful nights of sleep that the aging leader could remember. Now, he sat here in the council chambers listening as a bitter little man preached the evils of Naruto Uzumaki. Councilman Yakuja was a brilliant orator, a moving politician, and above all a shrewd businessman. For these reasons, he was the acting head of the civilian council. The man had an extraordinary loathing for Naruto, especially when one considers that he had lost no loved ones in the tragedy of Kyuubi's attack. His only losses had been financial, and compared to the overall damages sustained by Konoha, even those had been relatively slight. However, these facts didn't prevent him from desiring his own measure of revenge. Many and varied were the proposals brought before the council, ranging from bills granting the council the right to bring dissension charges against any businesses who serve those undesirable and harmful to Konoha's well-being to a specific restitution tax intended to force Naruto to pay for the property damage caused by Kyuubi before its sealing. Needless to say, despite nearly unanimous support from the civilian council, The Ninja Council and Hokage overruled the motions vehemently. Currently, the man was postulating that the woefully ill-omened creature had finally shown its true treasonous and violent nature. Sarutobi thought himself to be a considerably tolerant ninja, but he found himself wishing yet again that the man would just call Naruto a demon child so he would have an excuse to execute the miserable worm. Sadly, he studiously avoided anything that might so much as glance at the so-called Third Law Councilman Yakuju had been going at it in this way for nearly an hour now, occasionally interrupted by agreeable comments from his civilian constituents. Most of the Ninja Council had guessed at the ultimate intention almost immediately, with the civilians who weren't in on his agenda figuring it out themselves at latest within the last few minutes. If the typical pattern continued, he would receive a subtle suggestion to wrap things up when he reached the somewhat arbitrarily decided limit to his speeches. Otherwise, he would likely continue ranting until everyone who might disagree felt they'd had enough and left. Sarutobi contented himself with wondering which of his ninja would express their displeasure first, and in what manner. In a move that was neither unexpected nor particularly satisfying, Shibi Aburame was the one to declare an end to Yakuju's public display. The stoic Aburame had a less than amicable relationship with the judgmental civilian council, and his ability to intimidate with the subtlest of gestures was enough to even make Sarutobi jealous at times. With a simple shift of his body and mental suggestion to his internal hive to begin humming, the councilman's speech stumbled to a hasty end. He cleared his throat one last time before delivering his final summary, a surprisingly short one when taken into account alongside his earlier vociferousness. With these facts in mind, and having given significant consideration to events both current and past, we of the Civilian Council strongly suggest immediate sealing of Naruto Uzumaki. Following which, a further suggestion of execution be summarily effected. Many of the members of said Civilian Council were nodding emphatically, and even a smattering of applause followed the statement, which was quickly ended by the Hokage's glare. Am I to understand, Sarutobi clarified, that as recompense for his actions in protecting both his teacher and the secrets of this village, you wish to have Naruto put to death? Both of those situations to which you refer only came to be due to his own actions. Had he not treacherously stolen the scroll in the first place, there would have been no risk to the village, Yakuju responded. Not counting the traitor wandering around, muttered Shikaku under his breath. While it was an act of poor judgment from Naruto, Sarutobi responded, ignoring the Naruto's comment. He was fulfilling a mission issued to him by his superior. The fact that said superior proved to be a traitor to Konoha does not imply ill intent from Naruto himself. Additionally, given that Mizuki sabotaged his final exam, it would imply that it was a premeditated act of coercion on Mizuki's part. Quite frankly put, had Mizuki not manipulated the testing, we would have moved past this pointless debate long ago. Unless, of course, you were planning this even before the events of yesterday? A few of the councilman's colleagues shifted nervously, but Yakuju himself didn't so much as blink at the thinly veiled accusation. Leveling a steely gaze on the spokesman, Sarutobi made his ruling. Naruto Uzumaki will not be executed for actions taken in pursuit of his unsanctioned graduation exam. To put it simply, the entire situation in no way falls under the Civilian Council's range of jurisdiction. Neither to advise nor decide in any manner regarding this event. Be that as it may, Hokage-sama, replied Yakuju with an oily smile. Uzumaki has failed his final exam, and as such is soon to become primarily our concern. What matters a few days in the grand scheme of things? But if you insist, we will retract our suggestions until after his sealing. After all, it's not like you can just retest him. The political ramifications of such a blatant act of favoritism could be rather severe. Now listen here, you Weasley little shit! Some Inuzuka shouted, slamming her hand on the table and rising to glare at the councilman. You think you can come in here and just threaten the Hokage? Keep this crap up and I'll drag your ass out of here and feed you too. Enough! Roared the normally calm Hokage. Councilman Yakuju is correct in this matter. It would hardly be fair to the other students who failed, if we were to retest Naruto alone, and retesting them all would set a bad precedent for future years. However, I suggest you counselors, civilian and ninja alike, remember one thing: Sarutobi released enough of his killing intent that even the bravest of his ninja found themselves nearly hyperventilating. I am the Hokage for a reason, he stated calmly, and this is not a democracy. This is a military village, and as such, my word is law. My decisions are final. And any acts of sedition will be dealt with in a most assuredly permanent manner. He leveled his gaze at the trembling Civilian Council as he said that. I will decide how to handle the situation in the most effective manner, he decided, reigning in his presence. There are matters involved here that not even my closest advisors fully appreciate, and I will not risk the QB being released due to an error made in haste. Nor will I sacrifice a member of this village simply to sate the desires of those who still believe an innocent boy to be a demon. But Hokage-sama, a councilwoman inquired. Kitsune are known to be tricksters, wouldn't Uzumaki's pranks be the sort of thing we should expect from one? Perhaps, the Hokage conceded. But tell me, how many of those who have insulted or otherwise harmed Naruto were slain by the boy? Or simply vanished? None to my knowledge. Trust me when I say, Kyuubi was as vengeful as it was powerful. If Naruto were Kyuubi, we would have known long ago, if only by the trail of broken bodies left in his wake. The councils, both ninja and civilian, shared uneasy glances from that mental image. As a Jinchuriki, there is the chance that Naruto will one day have access to a portion of Kyuubi's strength. Assuming he becomes a ninja, that is. And when that happens, how he acts, and who he becomes, will rely heavily on his experiences. I have done what I can to make certain that he sees this village as a home worth protecting, with all the strength at his disposal. How many of you can say the same? Who among you have given the child reason to see you as anything but monsters as you claim him to be? Sarutobi let the question hang. He knew his words wouldn't sway the more vocal of Naruto's detractors, but some of those who had interacted with the boy personally looked uncertain. The old Hokage exhaled another cloud of pungent smoke. I believe we have pursued this particular matter as far as is necessary for one day. If there is nothing further for joint discussion, the civilian council is dismissed. The ninja council and I must discuss matters relating to the ceremony. And do keep in mind that all things discussed in these chambers are confidential, and any rumors which may happen to develop in the streets of Konoha will be pursued to their origin. After a few moments of quiet murmurs, Yakuju stood and bowed to the Hokage. Then I suppose this is the end of today's meeting. It was a pleasure as always, Hokage-sama. The sour note in his voice was not missed by any of the ninja present. The civilian council rose and trickled out the door. If there are no objections, a bandaged form stated in a voice that suggested there not be one. I would like to remain, in the interests of bipartisanship, of course. The Sandame's eyes narrowed in thought, an action shared to some degree or another by many of the ninja in the room. The speaker, Danzo Shimura, was the official mediator for the separate councils. A former Jounin and at one time Hiruzen Sarutobi's rival for position of Hokage. He was forced to resign due to injuries received in the last Ninja World War. The injuries, sustained from an exploding golem in a battle against a ninja from Iwagakure, heavily damaged his right side, rendering his arm and one eye useless, and leaving his leg crippled too badly for most combat needs. In fact, it was only the intervention of Danzo's shiftry that prevented his demise, to the unfortunate end of the Pokemon itself. Danzo was a known opponent of Sarutobi's more peace-oriented aspirations, but the Hokage couldn't think of any reason to object to his presence in the coming discussion. Very well, I see no harm in it. And certainly your own perspective might be of aid in the matter of Naruto Uzumaki, the Hokage allowed, subtly hinting at the root leader's experience in finding ways around issues of legality. What do you mean? Asked Shiza Akimichi. I thought you said he couldn't retake the test? If he can't retake it, and he failed it the 3 times he did, what other option is there? That would be the foremost matter on today's agenda, replied Sarutobi. I declined to mention it to the civilian council for obvious reasons, but sealing Naruto is simply not an option. The Shiki Fujin and 8 trigram seals used to bind the Kyuubi simply present too much of an unknown for us to risk applying unnecessary modifications, and to do so would risk an unpredictable and possibly violent reaction. I have already consulted with Jiraiya, and studied the scrolls Yondaime left on the Shiki Fujin, but neither he nor I are confident enough to guess at its degree of safety, especially considering the 2 sealing arrays would work counter to each other. Enko Mitarashi piped in a sarcastic tone, You mean how one's designed to limit chakra and the other is constantly forcing more into his body? I can't possibly see how that could be dangerous, well aside from turning the kid into a walking bomb when one of them finally breaks. Killing Naruto, and resulting in either massive destruction of whatever is around him, or the release of Kyuubi, continued Inoichi Yamanaka. I don't know about the rest of you, but neither of those sound like very pleasant options to me. Indeed, confirmed Sarutobi. I have ordered Naruto to spend the day recovering from his ordeal, but I have asked Irika-san and Nico-san to be here. He gestured to a cat Mastambu who had been conspicuously visible since the beginning of the meeting, and the sleepy-looking teacher who somehow managed to fade into the background, despite his irritation at certain counselors. They, in addition to the recorded report from Naruto himself, should give us a mostly complete view of the events. With that said, he retrieved a blue crystal about the size of his palm from within his robes and placed it on a specialized seal in front of him meant for such things. I believe we should listen to Naruto's side of things first, since he was the most involved. Forgive my interruption, Hokage-sama, interjected Irika. But if you plan to pass Naruto somehow, shouldn't we give him one of the Arceus plates? If he's spending the day resting anyway, he should certainly be given the opportunity to attune himself to whatever Pokemon will most suit him. Sarutobi chuckled. If Naruto hasn't made enough of an impression by now, I doubt a few hours will help any. Seeing Irika's puzzled look mirrored on many of the ninja, and blank ones on the rest, aside from Danzo and Hayashi's nearly unreadable expressions, he decided to clarify. Do you remember 2 years ago, when one of the Arceus plates disappeared? he asked Irika, who nodded a moment before he connected the obviously linked comment. You mean Naruto's had one for all this time? He exclaimed. How is that even possible? Don't they automatically return to where they belong? It's supposed to be impossible for anyone to steal them for that reason. Apparently, Arceus believes that plate is where it belongs. At least until Naruto trades it for his headband, Sarutobi replied. The ninja seemed even more surprised at that. Implied approval from what amounted to a divine being among Pokemon was impressive for anyone, let alone a dead last student. So the question is not should we pass him, pondered Danzo after a long moment. But rather, by what criteria can we do so without risking civil unrest? Perhaps we should hear the boy's side of the tale. If nothing else, it will give us time to accept these odd revelations. Gazing around to see if anyone had comments to add, Sarutobi touched the seal array surrounding the crystal and settled back to hear again the sad voice that haunted his sleep the night before. In a realm of not space, where both time and dimension flow at the whim of its sole inhabitant, a set of green eyes opened and looked out over a row of shimmering windows floating before them. Backlit by a field of infinite stars, nearly a score hovered in position, awaiting his attention. Arceus, god of Pokemon, and one of the few beings alive who could match the fury of a bijou, shook itself and stood from its prior lounged position. The nearly equine being paced regally towards the portals through which he would view the potential ninja of this village and swept his gaze across them. Of the 17, only 8 bore the images of students in some form of meditation, even so loosely as this particular village would describe it. With barely a thought, these moved away from the rest, lining themselves up for further consideration. The remaining 9 held the alpha Pokemon's attention for the moment. Opening a larger window, he swept his second-hand gaze across Konoha, seeking those attuned to the unattended plates with unerring accuracy. All were civilian children, and all were occupied in some form of frivolity, or another, be it sleeping, celebrating, or simply going about their lives as if it were a normal day off from school. Arceus searched the hearts and minds of these potential partners, looking for those who were following the ancient pact in spirit if not letter. Unfortunately, it was not to be. Most thought little of their future Pokemon, and those few who did, thought in such a manner as to imply that the creatures would be little more than pets. As if even the most unique of common animal could stand beside the least of Pokemon as an equal. He turned away, and with another thought, the empty windows moved away, lining themselves higher in the night sky so as to be out of the way, but within sight, in case one of the students rethought their decision and chose to return. If they did not make contact before the sun set, so too would their chances for attending the ceremony this year fade into darkness. Striding toward the first of the attended windows, Arceus looked upon the large form of one Chuji Akimichi. The boy was idly looking through a large scroll, in what seemed to be a ceremonial chamber built for this day. Scattered around the largest room were paintings and sculptures of Pokemon bound to their clan, both in the past and in recent times. Closing his eyes, the legendary leader cast his mind towards his target, feeling his thoughts and reading his emotions. Dad said I should read these stories, Chuji thought. He even said I'll be expected to add my own stories once I get my Pokemon. It seems Akimichi have always had Pokemon with strong defenses, but what kind would be best? Great-granddad had a rock type called Rhyperior, but Uncle Keek had the steel type Excadrill, and Dad has his normal type Kangaskhan. Most of my family seem to have had either stone or steel types, but how do I choose which is best for me? Dad once told me, the will of fire is the origin of all of Konoha's strength. Steel is only as strong as the flame that tempered it, and the most durable rocks of all are created by the fiery volcano. So maybe I should be thinking about fire types instead? No, that wouldn't be good. Whatever I get, steel or stone or anything else, I'll just use my own will of fire to make it the strongest it can possibly be. And together we'll protect all our friends. That's the Cho legacy. Arceus pulled his thoughts back from the now avidly reading boy. Steel or stone, he wonders, the Pokemon muttered to himself. Well, far be it from me to force the issue. With a moment's concentration, an egg appeared floating before the now opaque window. The egg was large, nearly the size of its future recipient's head, and possessed a dark gray coloration that seemed to reflect the ever-present starlight in a polished sheen. Nodding in satisfaction, Arceus moved on to the next of his subjects, almost fully veiled by his typical outfit. Shino Aburame knelt in a meadow within his family's compound. His eyes were closed, not that a casual observer would notice, and he meditated while listening to the buzz of his own hive as it communed with the wild insects flitting through the field around him. It is said that the traits of one's Pokemon affect the development of one's Kikachu, the stoic boy considered. My fathers have grown more durable through their association with his Heracross, while those of my clan who possess toxic allies have gained more varied capabilities, especially in regards to their bites. The question posed then, which is more beneficial to myself, my hive, and my future teammates? Insects are notoriously fragile, even among their Pokemon constituents. So any improvements in that regard would be assuredly welcome. However, It is said that the best defense is a good offense, so would a strong attacker not be more beneficial? But perhaps balance is the key. If one cannot have the best of both options, surely a compromise is not unthinkable? As the Aburaim's thoughts wound back and forth in a seemingly endless cycle of consideration, Arceus drew back once more. There are many kinds of balance in the world, he commented to the darkening window before him. I wonder if you will fully appreciate the potential before you. Turning away to the next portal, he left behind him an egg of slightly smaller size than the first. This egg was a muted white, traced with a curious pattern of pale lines. The third opened upon an argument of sorts. Ugh. Mom, I know what I'm doing. I'm here, the plate's here, and I'm surrounded by inspiration. This last part was said in a cheerful voice as the girl spun whimsically around her family's flower shop. You know, honey, your father and I talked, and we would really rather you spend your day focusing properly. You wouldn't want to get some horrid poison type like Cousin Akubi with that gross little Grimer of his, the girl's mother reproached. As if that'll really happen. A delicate flower such as myself obviously deserves a grass type, just like Dad's vile bloom. Except cuter and more elegant in every way. Ino Yamanaka continued silently, and when I get my Pokemon, Sasuke-kun is sure to choose me over forehead. It's practically guaranteed. Noticing the distracted expression on the girl, her mother released an exasperated sigh. This is about that Uchiha boy again, isn't it? Ino. Go home. No matter what you might be hoping, he isn't going to be wandering around, especially today. Ino's expression shifted almost instantly from daze to surprise to disappointment, before settling into a childish huff. You don't know that. Maybe Sasuke-kun will want to talk about team ideas? We might end up training together every day. She trailed off into a girlish giggle. Ino. Home. Now. Please, Mom, can I stay? Just for a couple more hours? Ino begged with a pout while fluttering her eyelashes in what she thought was a particularly lovely manner. No. And you know that look doesn't work on me. I mastered it before you were even born. In fact, I used that very same pout on your father the day I told him I wanted to have a baby. And she turned out so darn cute. Ino ducked the fingers aimed for her cheeks fast enough to surprise a jounin and ran for home, swearing to never use that look again, at least on anyone but Sasuke-kun. Arceus shook its head at the peculiar display of familial affection as he left the window, a dark blue-violet egg with thick green leaf-like designs pointing down from its peak floating in place before it. Within the fourth, a different sort of interaction was taking place. Two people, an older bearded man and a young dark-eyed boy, were bent over a board bearing wooden tiles. All I'm saying, Shikamaru, is that you should really put a little thought into this. It's not like it'll take any more effort than playing this game, the elder commented, his tone implying he'd repeated similar advice throughout the day. I still don't think it's that big a deal. I brought the plate like you asked, so whatever Arceus wants to know he can just take a peek and figure out. It's not like what Pokemon I get will matter in the long run, right? The unmotivated Nara replied. Don't be so sure about that, Asuma Sarutobi replied as he moved a piece on the game board and took a drag from his cigarette. I've seen more Pokemon than just about anyone in the village, so trust me when I say, you don't want just any at your side. The boy snorted as he moved his own piece. You're telling me you've seen more than even the Hokage? Isn't that a bit of a stretch? Not at all. I wasn't always stuck in Konoha, you know. Back in the day I was one of the 12 guardian ninja, protectors of the daimyo of fire himself. While it's true, Sarutobi might have seen more Pokemon in combat than I have. The daimyo had a lot of meetings with foreign diplomats, and every one of them had ninja escorts. I've seen a whole lot of things, people and Pokemon over the years. I remember one monkey thing I saw a few years back, Vigoroth I think it was called. You would hate to be stuck with one of them. Damn thing never stood still. Then there's those slowpoke things, so dumb it takes an hour for it to realize you stepped on its tail. And of course there's your teacher's Exploud. I'm sure you'd rather not get one of them. Asuma chuckled at Shikamaru's sour expression. Don't worry, there's a whole lot of Pokemon in this world. I'm sure Arceus can find one even you won't consider troublesome. Yeah, well that doesn't really help now. I mean, what am I supposed to do anyway? It's not like there's a category of Pokemon called not troublesome. I can just check on this thing, he remarked, tapping the nearby plate. Just think about the things you like, what you want to do with your life, stuff like that. You don't have to be too specific, but if it helps, think about this, he gestured to the game board. Some Pokemon are smarter than I am easily. I'm sure there are at least a few who can not only learn to play Shuggy, but can give even you a run for your money and time. Just don't judge the Pokemon you get too harshly at first. Almost all of them get stronger and smarter as they grow. Hell, some end up completely different in the end. You should know, Irika started out with a little thing shorter than my knee that couldn't stand a loud cough from too close. Shikamaru stared at his mentor for a long moment before shaking his head in amazement. Guess there's more to Pokemon than I realized, but could they really learn to play complicated games like Shugi? Hey, he asked, what's the smartest one you've ever seen? Personally? I don't really know. It's not like I had a whole lot of interaction with the visiting ones back in the Guardians. Asuma's eyes faded into the distance at his next words, but the smartest I've ever heard of. That would definitely be Yandame's Alakazoom. From what Sarutobi said when I was young, that thing was a certified genius course. I doubt Yandame ever tried teaching it to play games, but the war probably had a lot to do with that. With that sobering thought in mind, Shikamaru turned his focus inward, unconsciously falling into his standard thinking pose. If Asuma is right, maybe there would be something out there that would pair well with me, but maybe I haven't been taking this seriously enough. I don't want to get too far in life, that would just be way too troublesome. But I definitely need something just in case things go wrong like they did in the past. Okay, if you're listening, Arceus, here's my wish list. A lot of brains, some muscle to back it up, and please, for the love of everything sacred, make it less annoying than Ino. Arceus blinked at the unusually forward request, then with an odd-looking shrug, made its choice. The boy wants a lot of brains and strength, as well. I believe I know just the ally for him. That said, he turned, and with a wave of his tail another egg appeared. This one was coated with geometric patterns in varied shades of blue. The fifth window held an image that caught the god Pokemon's attention more fully than the others thus far witnessed. A dark-haired girl knelt in front of her plate, silently weeping while tightly clutching an amateurishly made blonde doll. Hinata Hyuga was distraught. She knew she had an obligation, both to uphold the exalted status of her clan and to honor the pact formed with the legendary Pokemon made when the village of Konoha was founded, but she couldn't get one thought to stop haunting her. Naruto-kun failed. That wasn't uncommon. Naruto-kun failed almost as often as she did. But the boy always got back up and tried again, and again, and again. If he fell 100, or even 1,000 times, she knew deep in her heart that he would get up and succeed eventually. Her despair grew from the simple fact that the exams were, as near as she could tell, ironclad. Even the vaunted Byakugan, the ultimate Jujutsu of perception, couldn't see an option that would allow her secret, or not so secret to most of her classmates, crushed to continue as an aspiring ninja. I should be thinking about Pokemon, so that I can become a strong heiress and lead my clan as well as my father, her thoughts read. But if Naruto-kun can't be a ninja at all, what chance do I have to become a strong enough one to impress the elders? Oh, and Naruto-chan, what do I do? She asked, tearily gazing into the blue felt eyes of the painstakingly crafted doll in her arms. She had made it herself not long ago, after learning to sew simple quilts. The peaceful process had become something of a touchstone to keep her close to her lost mother. The kind woman had made many in her life, and Hinata had a treasure box hidden in her closet which held the last one her mother had made for her before her death, and until recently had also held Hanabi's first. Hinata had given it to her younger sister in secret on her last birthday, now that the girl was old enough to appreciate it, as a memento of the mother who had died shortly after completing it, due to complications during labor. She was too afraid to show her feelings to the unpredictable object of her affections, and so had made Naruto-chan to help her become more comfortable with the idea. Sadly, progress was slow in coming. The doll looked at her, the permanently soft smile and happy eyes that had given her so much trouble giving no answers. However, they did hold a memory. It had taken Hinata a mere couple months to get Naruto-chan's body finish, complete with a near-exact copy of the jumpsuit that was so synonymous with the real Naruto. She had felt that would be the hardest part of the process. She was wrong, very wrong. Despite being able to see his smile, the one that seemed too large for his face and forced his eyes shut, a crime in her mind, no matter what, such beautiful eyes should never be hidden. Every time she thought of him, it looked so artificial every time she set it to cloth. She resolved that she must be missing something, some inherent aspect of what made Naruto who he is. Thus decided, she increased her stocky reconnaissance practice. She watched him, in school, in training, around the village, everywhere she could manage without feeling like she was violating his privacy. Nothing came of this enhanced espionage, until one day she spotted him cleaning. For some reason there was an assortment of strange residues spread across the outside of his apartment, but rather than being upset, he was scrubbing like it was nothing unusual. In fact, he was laughing and talking to the door of all things. This was the first time she had seen a smile other than the giant one he always used, and it took her breath away. It wasn't an expression that screamed "I'm happy, and you can't stop me" like his normal one. This one seemed to make his eyes sparkle and make the sun wish to hide from the shame of being outshone. After that day, she started to look more closely, and she realized the giant smile was a shield. Sometimes it was real enough, but the reality was always expanded upon. As if by pretending to be happier than he was, he could make it true. It made the girl sad, especially when she remembered the times she had inadvertently hurt him. The most poignant of those memories was the last time they had sparred. It was early in her final year. She and Naruto had been assigned together for a ranking spar in taijutsu. Hinata was frankly terrified. It was Naruto-kun. What if she hurt him? What if she embarrassed him? Would he hate her in either case? But what if she let him beat her? Would he think she was weak and start looking at her like the elders did? She wasn't sure she could handle it if the boy of her dreams started looking at her with eyes full of utter disdain. What if? As her thoughts circled without end, she got more and more nervous, not noticing the expression of sorrow on Naruto's face. She came from her thoughts with a flinch as she heard a savage smack of flesh on flesh. She looked up slowly, as neither pain nor even the feel of impact seemed to register. Across from her, Naruto was picking himself off the ground outside the sparring circle, a dark bruise forming on his cheek. Coming from the students around them were numerous insults, interspersed with the occasional bark of laughter. Damn, Naruto had exclaimed. That guy hits hard. Naruto, Iruka replied, massaging his temple as if to ward off a headache. You realize you just disqualified yourself, right? Hey! That was a knockout. I was down for a full 10 seconds. Fine, you knocked yourself out. But since you both knocked someone out and were knocked out in one hit, it averages to a 0. The match is done, get back in line you two. Hinata was shocked. Naruto had done something like that for her? Why would he do that? Maybe he liked her? Her gaze tracked the blonde boy, until he looked back at her with an expression that shattered those half-formed hopes. She didn't know how to describe it, but she never wanted to see that blend of sadness and guilt in his eyes ever again. At that point, she decided on a new short-term goal for herself. She was going to beat Naruto-kun in a spar, so she never had to risk seeing that expression again, and maybe if she were lucky she would be able to nurse him back to health. That particular mental image haunted her dreams off and on for the rest of the school year. She had even considered buying an outfit to wear in case it came to be, but was thwarted by her unusually rapid growth in some areas anyway. Despite her plans, Iruka-sensei seemed unwilling to cooperate. They had never been paired again, not even when she requested it specifically. Apparently, they were too far apart in the rankings for her to request an opponent her inferior. As she stared at the doll, her thoughts swirling, she realized something important, no matter her bloodline, or the expectations she would have to fulfill in the future. At the moment, she was just an academy student. Nothing she could do would aid Naruto-kun, and unless she had some brilliant idea to help him, she had no choice but to trust him to overcome this obstacle on his own. So like always, she would have to watch from afar and hope for the best. Damn, this being weak. Pardon my language, Arceus-sama, she thought. Looking from the doll to the plate, and its scrolling figures, and decided. I will become strong enough to stand beside Naruto-kun when he becomes Hokage. And if I can manage that, getting rid of the caged bird seal will be easy, right, Naruto-chan? She thought, smiling for the first time that day. Arceus, was confused. The girl was obsessed with the boy, Naruto. But in all that mess, she hadn't given him much to work with. Just the knowledge that she wanted to become strong, and that she had 2 long-term goals to achieve. He knew of the seal used by the Hyuga. A number of their more foolish members had tried to apply a similar restraint to the Pokemon paired with them long ago. Arceus was certain the collective response of legendary might, and subsequent punishment of those humans responsible was sufficient to deter a repeat event. Personally, Arceus approved of the elimination of the seal, although he would not act directly against it, due to his own decisions to remain uninvolved in purely human matters. As to the second goal, Arceus was somewhat acquainted with Naruto. A mild way of putting it, to be sure, he considered as he glanced to the only long-term window in his realm with its egg floating before it. He sent a thought picture to the underdeveloped being within the 2-year-old egg and frowned at the response. Unknown to many, the Pokemon eggs chosen for assignment were blessed with an ability to understand and relate to humans, much more so than the average wild Pokemon. And the egg Arceus had chosen for the precocious Jinchuriki was of a species more inclined to it than most. As a result, the egg had remained, patiently waiting and observing its future partner in an amorphous way. Sadly, its response thought form was that Naruto had no idea of the feelings from the poor girl. Arceus thought for a time, still watching as the girl rocked on her knees, chatting amiably, if stammeringly, with the doll. Discussing various plans for the future, speculating at the location of, in her mind, her and Naruto-kun's inevitable first date, and various other unimportant matters. Shortly, a thought passed through his mind, one he hastily decided came from too much watching of a certain blonde prankster, but the more he considered it the more interesting it seemed. With a chuckle and a wave of its tail, he left an egg behind him colored in 2 tones of red. A solid maroon on top, with a slightly darker red forming a design like curling waves surrounding its base. In a training field, Arceus observed Sasuke Uchiha through the 6th opening. The area around him stood testament to a long day of exercise. Posts were damaged, targets were pin-cushioned with varied throwing weapons, and burned scars marred everything. Still not strong enough, the Avenger's thoughts revealed. I have to get stronger, to avenge my family and restore my clan to its proper place. But soon tomorrow I take the first real step towards catching up with him. Once I have my Pokemon, we train, we get stronger, and when we're ready, vengeance shall be mine. This decision was punctuated by a punch drove a crack into the training post nearly halfway through. As he examined the damage, Arceus could feel the words again, almost a mantra, still not strong enough. Arceus could feel the dark emotions writhing in his heart, just as he could feel the sparks of light that prevented the boy from being irredeemable. It would be a risk, giving someone as shadowed by anger as him a Pokemon, but with the right one to act as guidance, he might find his way back to the proper perspective so long abandoned by his forebears. Thus decided, an egg appeared before him. Orange as a setting sun, and with bands of a lighter cream color circling it and the spiked waves of a flickering flame, the egg floated, exuding a sense of eagerness. The god Pokemon was confident that he had chosen well in this case. This particular species had always been spirited, and had something of a tradition of clashing with those who went against their code of honor or even just annoyed them. But their strength would undoubtedly impress the Uchiha, and if he were to take after them in temperament, it could only be an improvement over the hateful aura that seemed to haunt him. Yet another dispute proceeded within the 7th. This one, however, was a full-scale argument. "Listen here, you little turd," roared a wild-faced woman, the twin fawn-like marks making her look fierce despite her normally kind disposition. "My Dustox is not a lame Pokemon. You apologize right now." "I'm sorry you got a weak Pokemon," her opponent countered cockily. Kiba Inuzuka, once again, was trying to exercise his supposed dominance against someone he had no business provoking. Which is why it wasn't particularly surprising when he found himself pinned to the wall a foot off the ground by his irate sister. "You're just jealous I'm gonna get a stronger and cooler Pokemon than you," Kiba croaked out through his sister's strangling. "There's more to a Pokemon than being strong," Hannah replied, relenting slightly as the younger began turning out colors. "Dustox isn't strong, but she is very good at what she does. Isn't that right, Dusty?" she cooed at the moth-like creature hovering nearby. Its reply was a happy-sounding iteration of its name. Yeah, but I'm still gonna get me one strong enough to take your big bug out in one shot. And then who'll be next in line to be clan head, huh? I'll be number 1, that's who! And then I'll have my pick of the babes." His expression at the end was one of perverse glee that only Jiraiya of the Sannin would be proud to display. Hannah sent her brother a disgusted look, amazed at the depths of depravity to which an adolescent boy could descend. "Damn, you're like a dog with a bone. If this is the stupid crap you're gonna spend your day thinking about, then I hope you get exactly what you deserve. You are so damn hard-headed." Her declaration complete, she stomped out of Kiba's room and slammed the door behind her. Kiba, his perverse grin still in place, replied in a voice he was certain she wouldn't hear, "Hard as a rock, and that's how the chicks like it." Unfortunately for Kiba, he hadn't noticed that Dustox had been locked in the room with him. The Pokemon decided to punish the comment in her master's stead, as well as claim its own measure of payback for certain remarks, and released enough stunning powder from its wings to leave the boy in paralyzed displeasure until the following morning. Its task complete, it banished itself in a flash of light. Silent witness to the event, Akamaru hopped from his position on the bed and dragged a blanket onto his partner, attempting to provide some degree of comfort. "Well, that was certainly unique," he muttered. "And not a whole lot to work with either. Strong and cool and ice type, perhaps? No, humans don't mean cold when they say cool, so that just leaves strong. Strong enough to take out a Dustox in one hit anyway." Unfortunately, looking deeper into the boy's psyche revealed little of assistance, a strong sense of loyalty, occasionally overshadowed by a typical human male's libido. Thinking to the woman's comments, he tried to glean what he could in the way of insight. Inspiration hit him as he pondered the matter. The Pokemon he had in mind would be difficult to obtain, even for him, but it would also be the perfect opportunity to resolve a matter that had been brought before him by another legendary in the not-so-distant past. Sending a message along the psychic pathways established to link the legendaries for communication and to provide mutual aid in times of crisis, Arceus summoned one of his more eccentric of allies. In a swirl of leaves, Celebi appeared and clapped her small fist to her chest in a Konoha-style salute. "You summoned me, Anukajukichi-sama?" the diminutive time-travel Pokemon stated. Arceus gazed at his compatriot, one of the few Pokemon in the world who had taken to way of their ninja co-inhabitants with a vigor. Celebi had somehow decided that the ninja of the village hidden in the leaves were just as much guardians of the forest as she herself was. Once that happened, it was only a matter of time before she decided to try out the ninja lifestyle herself. In a peculiar blend of the leaf storm and teleport abilities, she had even managed to duplicate a passable Shunshin mimicry. A side effect of this odd obsession was that Arceus almost always had eyes on Konoha beyond the legendary already assigned to fulfill their side of the graduation ceremony. Arceus had many times in the last century attempted to do away with the ridiculous title, but it was hard to do when he was never sure if each time he saw Celebi was from before or after the last time he had made the attempt. Living outside of the flow of time was a confusing prospect, even for a nigh omnipotent being. As I'm sure you know, the students within Konoha's academy have contacted me seeking their allies. Seeing Celebi's eager nod, Arceus continued, I have come upon circumstances which prompt me to acquire a Pokemon outside the norm. Regarding that matter we discussed last time you sought me in fact. Do you wish me to arrange for the transfer, Arceus-sama? I have already discussed it with Kyogre and Groudon, and they agreed to help. It wasn't easy, but I managed to convince them. The fairy-like creature would probably been bouncing, if it hadn't been flying a few feet off the ground ever since it realized what Arceus was getting at. And you have already determined an appropriate place to build the habitat? The legendary leader inquired, quirking what would have been an eyebrow if it had them. Yup. Just offshore from the land of lightning there are deposits of everything we need, even an underground spring. The whole place will be self-sustaining, I guarantee it. Very well, Arceus allowed, but before you proceed, I need you to bring me. Already got it, Arceus-sama. The alpha Pokemon turned to the already tinted window beyond which Kiba rested fitfully. A second Celebi hovered there expectantly, holding an egg larger than itself. The egg held a simple coloration, half gray and half blue, with the division between the two a zigzagging design. Sometimes, Celebi, I think you do that just to make me look foolish. Do what, Arceus-sama? The creature who now existed twice at one time asked simultaneously. Arceus blinked as he tried to make sense of it, then with a shake of his head decided it wasn't worth the effort. Never mind, proceed with your idea, but try not to startle the locals too badly. Yes, Inukajukuj-sama, the two exclaimed, before vanishing in identical Shunshin replicas. In the realm of not space behind them, Arceus wished that old myth about him having 1,000 arms, and more importantly the hands included, were true. He could use a temple massage right now. Sighing, he decided to move to the last of the current batch of occupied windows. After what he had encountered so far, he felt himself prepared for everything well. The pink hair was a bit startling and the photographs wallpapering her room were a bit more so. Thankfully the girl seemed to be flipping through a book on Pokemon, apparently a guide to the various types and species known to Konoha and its allies. I'm gonna get my Pokemon tomorrow. Sakura Haruno somehow squeaked inside her own mind. I'm gonna get one so strong and beautiful, and all around better than Enopig that Sasuke-kun will be sure to fall in love with me. Is every girl in this village boy crazy? Arceus couldn't help but wonder, as the girl's thoughts and mental images converged in a rather disturbing display. I wonder what type Sasuke-kun will get? Maybe he'll get a rock type? Chiseled abs or maybe a fighting type? Sweaty glistening muscles maybe a dark type? Shadowed glances that she sometimes imagined hid deep wells of longing for her ovu. Fire. Definitely fire. 100 images of times Sakura looked at Sasuke and felt he was hot enough to burn a lesser woman. I wish I could get a Sasuke type an image of Sasuke, holding her close while they bore matching rune marks on their forearms. Whose Sasuke-kun? The girl sighed mentally while following that mental path until her face was a brighter shade than her hair. Arceus watched as the girl rolled on the floor clutching the book tightly in her arms, clearly in the grips of some fangirlish dreamscape. As he stepped away from the window and gathered his thoughts, he realized not once had the girl given him a clear idea what she wanted. The strongest thought she had as to what she wanted was the approval of the boy of her dreams, Sasuke Uchiha. Well, that and that nonsensical fantasy about Sasuke-type Pokemon. Preparing himself for a deeper look into the girl's psyche, he focused on her once more. Oh, Sasuke-kun, please be more gentle. Only to decide he had already been as deep within the strange girl's mind as he was willing to go. Okay, fine, Arceus decided. I have no clue what she wants, or what that boy might want from her. And I really don't want to have to go back in there ever again. I'll just give her a chance to figure it out herself. So decided, Arceus turned and left with more haste than dignity. Behind him, a brown egg with a tan zigzag circling its middle exuded a puzzled emotion. After the exhausting series of events so far, and another glimpse at those portals which remained unoccupied, he decided to have a look into the lone remaining window. Walking up to stand beside the egg that had been unofficial roommate to the god of Pokemon for 2 years, he glanced at it. This egg was an almost pure white, with green lines flowing down from its peak, but fading before they reached the bottom. As it slowly rotated in position, flickers of red would occasionally glint from it, as if there were glitter mixed into its shell. Feeling a sense of concern flowing from the near sentient thing, he turned his gaze upon the window, and the dejected-looking boy within. Arceus was puzzled. Every time he had looked into this particular window, Naruto Uzumaki had been in a state of near-perpetual activity, as if the very act of being still was uncomfortable. But today he seemed listless, as if all energy had been drained away. Seeking answers, he chose to look into the boy's mind. I could ask Tsuchijizan if he has work at the ramen shop, but he and I am Nichin have it handled pretty easy most days. If they let me keep my chakra, I could work in the lumber mill easy, but that's not gonna happen. I don't think any place that really knows about QB will hire me. I guess I'll have to see if Sarutobijiji has any ideas about work outside the village. It'll really suck having to leave, but I guess it's better than living on the streets. The boy's thoughts were, if anything, more disheartening than his expression led Arceus to believe. Sifting through the boy's recent memories proved more horrifying than depressing. The boy had been through a nearly unimaginable ordeal in the last day. Wrenching his mind from the boy's thoughts, he couldn't help but remember the day he had first encountered him. He had finished assigning Pokemon quickly that year. A combination of simple desires and low graduation rates had made the task rather easy. As he settled down to rest and observe the world as it continued in its complex and wondrous flow, he was interrupted by another of his plates coming active. Looking to it, he saw that the area around the plate was dark. Night had apparently fallen in Konoha without his notice. Altering the view, he gazed around, his eyes piercing the veil of shadows with ease. He was amused to observe a 10-year-old child sneaking about, the relatively large object clutched tightly to him. Arceus decided to peek into the boy's heart. The situation was too peculiar to be a simple case of traitorous intent. All right, the young Uzumaki crowed mentally. I got it. Now I just gotta figure out how this thing works, and I can get me a Pokemon. Well, I still gotta pass the test and become a ninja first, but I'll get it next time. Databao. Databao? What a strange word, Arceus had thought, and even to the current day, he had never managed to puzzle out what the term meant. Looking deeper, the ancient being was shocked. The boy lived a life that no being should ever be forced to. It didn't take much searching to determine the reason for the child's forced solitude. The mark of a bijou was imprinted on his very soul. The bijou and legendaries had stood opposed for years beyond human memory, but never had they judged the so-called Jinchuriki for the crimes of their prisoners. Once, Mutuo had explained it as an act so short-sighted only a human would consider it. The first of the artificially created legendaries never quite lost his scorn of the human race, but even he gave the Jinchuriki a chance, before he turned his loathing upon them. Arceus had decided to observe the boy for a period before making his decision. Should he reclaim the plate, permanently or until he passed the human requirements, or should he let it remain, thereby giving his unspoken approval of the boy? Days turned into weeks, and a new dilemma arose in Arceus' mind. He no longer questioned whether the boy would be acceptable, nor his sincerity in regards to his very few friends. The question he found himself struggling to answer was, what should he receive? He possessed a level of determination that was nearly unmatched among those in his age group, as well as a peculiar purity of spirit that Arceus had thought long since gone from the world. Strangely, the child had never asked for anything specific, perhaps in an oversight in his understanding, or simply an act of blind faith in Arceus' ability to choose what he truly needed. This posed something of a conundrum for the alpha among Pokemon. First and foremost, he preferred to choose according to the desires of recipient, but Naruto's desires seemed to be simple: decent food, a safe home, and whenever possible the company of his friends. There was no doubt in either his mind or Naruto's that the Pokemon he received would become his friend. That seemed to be the part the child most anticipated. It was more than a month before his daily observations rewarded him with the spark of an idea. He had watched as Naruto exited the place of learning he attended most days. He watched as his classmates left in groups of friends or with their families. He and one other had often remained separate from the larger group of congregating humans, and they often left separately and unaccompanied by any other. On this particular day, the other child, a large eyebrow boy with an eager face and strange eyes, was approached by a large man in an overabundance of green. The two spoke at length, at the end of which the two embraced in a disturbing manner and left together, chatting boisterously. Watching the events from his place on the tree swing, Naruto had hidden a pained grimace as his memories floated back to his years in the orphanage, and the many times prospective parents came to choose a child. Never once did Naruto even get looked at in consideration. That Arceus realized was the key. The one integral aspect of human life that Naruto lacked. The boy had never had a family, never a brother or a sister, never a mother or father. It could be said he had a grandfather, but even at his most naive, Naruto knew it was only pretend. Now that he had a direction to look, it was a simple matter to choose a partner for the future ninja. The group he considered best, however, were among those whom had steadfastly refused to be involved in the world of ninja. They had nothing against humans as a whole, but the ninja lifestyle of violence was held as contemptible by the species. Luckily, he was able to overcome their recalcitrance in this one circumstance by showing them parts of the boy's memories, and explaining his situation. He had been granted an egg, and took his leave, thankful that he had been able to convince them. It was not an official agreement, but it was true nonetheless. He would not force those who objected to the ninja way to ally with them. Letting the memories drift away, he sent reassuring thoughts to the egg at his side. With a gesture, he opened a window to the one who could fix this situation, seriously considering violating his self-imposed ban on interfering in human affairs. When he beheld the still proceeding council session, he decided to simply observe for a time, and see how they intended to proceed. The Hokage stood and glanced around at the room full of surprised-looking ninja. Now that we have heard the details of these events, is there anything anyone needs clarified before we proceed with the discussion? I got a question for ya, called out Enko. Did you really get taken out by a pair of fake tits on a 12-year-old boy? 'Cause if you're really that desperate, I got a real set right here I can show ya for a price. The sadistic woman offered with an evil grin while grasping said objects through her trench coat. Poor Iruka had taken to pounding his forehead into the table, remembering his own experience with the perverse jutsu. Sarutobi groaned. He knew someone would ask about that embarrassing event. Yes, Naruto did manage to defeat me, although I would like to think it was more surprise than perversion on my part that made it possible. He pointedly ignored the incredulous looks from his old teammates. And no, I do not wish to see your breasts. Also, tales of that event will not leave this room, on penalty of an extended stay in the TNI interrogation division. Enko actually laughed at the threat. I'm sure Ibiki-kun would love to test out some of his new tricks on the greenies here, she retorted, gesturing to some of the more cowed council members. But if you're gonna threaten me with a good time, you should do it yourself, she purred. I will pay your dango bill for 1 month, not a day longer. And if you push me I will put you on babysitting D ranks for the same period. Sarutobi conceded, knowing that the twisted woman was easier, and safer, to bribe than threaten. Deal, she chirped happily. The sound of a clearing throat pulled the Hokage's attention from the cheerful-looking woman and towards Shikaku. Not to be disrespectful, Hokage-sama, but what's the deal with that door business? It was almost as if he were talking about an imaginary friend or something. Shouldn't he have outgrown something like that years ago? That's a pretty accurate description of it actually, he replied. As you know, Naruto has no real friends his age, and while he may not seem the type, he has rather acute skills of observation. I believe this fact stems from his somewhat reasonable paranoia when traveling within the village. Naruto long ago learned that one of the truest forms of evidence among friends is mutual defense. I'm sure you three have long memories of similar events in your childhoods, he pointed out as Shikaku, Chuza and Inoichi nodded in response. Naruto has rarely had anyone defend him, even more so on a regular and visible basis. Iruka-san and I have done what we could over the years, but by necessity our actions were limited by presence or politics. The Umbu members who have acted in his protection have always been too impersonal to approach the realm of friendship, and so the boys' options there were limited as well. That all makes sense, but how does it relate to a door of all things? Queried Shikaku. Before I granted Naruto that apartment, Jiraiya of the Sannin and myself applied multiple reinforcing and defensive seals to the entirety of the complex. Naruto's home is nearly as indestructible as this tower, excluding of course the fact that only the one area is so fortified. To date, those defenses have repelled an average of 3 attempted intrusions a month. There were many wide eyes at this revelation. None of the ninja had any inkling of how serious the members of the village were in their hatred of the boy. The vast majority of these were shortly after he was instated there, and currently the actual attacks occur less than once a month, but the investment has more than paid for itself in regards to Naruto's welfare. Regardless, many times, that door has been the only thing standing between Naruto and his aggressors. Is it truly so surprising that a child below the age of 5 would start to believe the act a conscious one on the part of an inanimate object? It certainly never objected to his, or his caretaker's entrance. Sarutobi let that statement stand for a long moment before moving on. If there are no more questions, we should proceed to the heart of the matter. On what grounds do we make Naruto Uzumaki a ninja of Konohagakure? Iruka Umino, as his teacher, what is your assessment? Well, to be honest Hokage-sama, before yesterday I'd have said he was 50-50 at best. He has trouble planning ahead, but thinks fast on his feet. His fighting technique is a complete bastardization of the academy form, but he uses it in a way that is unpredictable and somewhat difficult to anticipate. Unfortunately, most of the time his attacks are completely direct and lack any finesse or guile. In regards to jutsu, well, his henge is undeniably advanced. His kawarimi is above academy standard as well. His basic bushin technique is non-existent, but as you heard, he essentially mastered the Kage Bushin in a single day. His chakra control, however, is abysmal. In regards to his less practical skills, he's a mess. His academic scores were universally low, his tactical ability is unorthodox, if somewhat effective, and his temperament would lead him to be something of a hindrance in delicate or diplomatic missions. I see, and what changed during the events yesterday? Among the attributes I listed? Nothing. But I realized something. Somehow, beneath that mess of faults and random brilliance, Naruto is a true ninja of Konohagakure. Everything he did after failing the exam should have been impossible for a chunin to accomplish, let alone an academy student, but he managed to pull it off anyway. He may not always get it right on the first try, but in the end he will, and he won't stop trying until he does. And if that isn't the sheer personification of the will of fire, then I don't know what is. It would be a crime not to do everything in my power to help Naruto reach his goals. And I've got no intention of taking after Mizuki in that regard. Iruka's voice rang with conviction as he spoke those words, though as he realized who he was speaking to, his hand came up to scratch at his scar nervously. Sorry, I guess I got carried away, Hokage-sama, he said sheepishly. Sarutobi chuckled lightly as he reassured the teacher. No need to apologize. I asked for your honest opinion, and I'm certain that is what I received. In fact, I admit to having similar thoughts in regards to Naruto's potential. I must also admit to some foreknowledge regarding his chakra control. He simply has too much flowing through him, thanks largely to his prisoner, to restrain it to levels we would consider even average. I wouldn't be surprised in the least if that were the reason behind his inability to use the basic Bushin properly. It would certainly explain how he was able to produce more shadow clones on his first day than I could in my prime. You mean you knew it would be impossible for him to make a Bushin and didn't tell anyone? Iruka growled indignantly. Suspected, the Hokage corrected. And I had hoped he would find a way to work around it on his own so we wouldn't have had to deal with this situation in the first place. A workaround? Iruka repeated incredulously. Yes, maybe making a field of clones rather than just one or two. Or even just one giant one, although I suppose given his Oiroku no Jutsu, I should be glad that one hadn't occurred to him. A giant version of that would probably take out half village, and enrage the rest. But I wouldn't have put it past him to make some kind of prank out of it. The council's reactions to that mental image varied based on gender and level of perversion. Some developed nosebleeds, some cracked knuckles, and one giggled evilly. Enko, that idea is officially part of our agreement about not telling stories. But it would be so cool. And the people would all freak. You never let me have any fun. The psychotic special jounin pouted. Your definition of fun needs some serious reconsideration. Something like that would cause far more paperwork than I'm willing to tolerate in Konoha. If a future situation warrants, I may let you take the boy out and cause as much chaos as you like against an enemy village. And may Kami have mercy on their sanity. Really, the evil chuckle flowing into maniacal laughter wasn't unexpected, but the thunder and lightning strike were a bit excessive. He considered issuing an order to restrict Kurenai from teaching her friend genjutsu techniques outside the demands of her profession. Thankfully, the more responsible jounin would be occupied with students in the coming future. If we are quite through with the distractions, the gravelly voice of Danzo interjected. It might be wise to return to the subject at hand. After a searching gaze from Sarutobi, followed by a nod of acquiescence, Danzo rose and continued to speak. I have recently come into possession of some information regarding Uzumaki's academic shortcomings, as well as his unusual aptitude for infiltration techniques and lateral thinking processes. Danzo struck his cane on the floor with a sharp crack, and two blank mastambu appeared within the council chambers. The obvious root members knelt before Danzo, one holding a single green-covered book, and the other a stack of what looked to be academy textbooks. Danzo accepted the green one, and gestured to the other to place the stack on the council's table. Those ninja who were knowledgeable of the officially disbanded group eyed the two warily, until with a bow to the Hokage and salute to Danzo, they vanished in a swirl of leaves. Iruka-san, if you would be so kind as to inspect the books? I had my retinue of guards attain those from Uzumaki's apartment during his disappearance yesterday. I had a feeling something of this sort would occur. Danzo's explanation was met with suspicion from the Hokage and council as a whole. Iruka's gasp as he rushed through the surprisingly well cared for textbooks drew the attention of everyone to him. It's wrong, he muttered. It's all wrong. You! He demanded forcefully, pointing towards one of the hidden umbu, an act that caused some consternation in the veiled guard and some surprise in the jounin who hadn't noticed him prior. Go get me Naruto's file from the school administration building, it'll be in room 103 file cabinet. I hope it's not presumptuous of me, Danzo interrupted, but I have already taken the liberty of retrieving the files you require. As if it were waiting for just this signal, a third blank-masked root agent appeared, handed the file off to the impatient teacher, and vanished without a superfluous movement. I leave you to your work now, Danzo stated as he took half a step back to await the teacher's analysis. Within seconds, each of the books were opened to pages covering significant matters in the course study of academy students, and Iruka had expertly located and arranged the corresponding tests in front of himself. As he searched through the offending textbooks, he swept back and forth over the tests with a pen produced from some unknown teacher space. As the tests were regraded according to the new criteria, they received one of 3 marks: a check for correct answers, a check within a circle for answers correct according to the books in front of him, and a simple X for answers which correspond to either. As he passed through each of the 7 years' worth of selected tests Naruto had taken, he passed them to the Sandame, who lined them in front of himself after a momentary study. Reaching the final 3 years, during which Naruto had repeated the curriculum each time, one thing was abundantly clear. Had Naruto been given the real textbooks and not the altered and edited trash now sitting before him, the boy wouldn't have been anywhere near the bottom of his grade. Iruka couldn't be certain, but judging from the improvement over the 3-year repetition, it was only his tendency to deliver most important facts personally that allowed Naruto to pass the academic tests this final year at all. In fact, if one were to assume the textbook answers to be right, the last of his tests would have been a perfect score, rather than the barely passing 75% that it was. As it was, the vast majority of the answers he gave that were incorrect were consistent, a fact Iruka cursed himself for missing. So Sarutobi began, looking at the proverbial writing on the wall. Naruto-kun has been hindered from the very beginning. How could I have missed this? The aging Hokage seemed to deflate with the knowledge of his failure to protect one of the children in his charge from the machinations of those with ill intent. I missed it, too, Hokage-sama, Iruka commiserated. I should have realized something was wrong. I should have tried harder to tutor him, something. Actually, Danzo interrupted yet again, the fault lies with one Tekisuto Odajizushi. If you will notice the issuance signature, she is the one who assigned all of Uzumaki's textbooks. With your permission, Anbu are in position to arrest her as we speak. Granted, the Hokage replied, something very much resembling wrath flickering in his usually soft eyes. Danzo nodded but gave no further gestures. Apparently the root agents knew their cues and moved appropriately. Obviously, we must act to correct Uzumaki's lack of knowledge with as much haste as possible, but that is no grounds upon which to delay his promotion. He will have at least a number of months of D-rank missions before his abilities will be put to any real test. Until then, I believe Iruka-san's suggestion of tutoring to be for the best. Agreed, Sandame responded. Iruka-san can tutor Naruto in the evenings after classes let out. Hokage-sama, not to be discourteous, but I have my hands rather full when classes are in session. I have about a month before the new year starts back up, but after that I'm likely to be tied up until nearly midnight, especially with no one to assist me in the teaching. Iruka protested. I will assign someone to be your second, the Hokage replied. If nothing else, one of my secretaries can help with your paperwork after class, so you get out at a reasonable hour. That still doesn't help me stuff 5 years of teaching into Naruto's head in a matter of months, Iruka reminded. Then don't, some complained from the largely forgotten ninja council. Just hammer the crap he needs in, and leave the rest for later. It's not like he'll need to know what the birthmark on the Nidame's ass looked like when he's fighting for his life. The Nidame had a how would you know this? And why would you tell me? Iruka shouted, scandalized. I don't, and you know what I mean. Just teach the stuff he needs to survive, and leave the political stuff for when he needs it. You did say he wants to be Hokage. Gotta live a few more years before he'll have a chance at that, right? She replied with a grin. That might work, the teacher considered. If I teach him the immediately important and cool stuff now, I can leave the more diplomatic and historical matters for when he's older and has enough experience to see how they're important. Now that that's worked out, Sarutobi spoke up, returning the yet again wandering discussion to its proper course. You said you had more information on Naruto's other abilities? He asked of Danzo. Yes, he replied, placing the green book on the table and sliding it to the Hokage. Please, tell me your impressions of this book. Looking at the book, the Hokage paled noticeably. You found this in Naruto's possession? Seeing the mummified man's somber nod, he looked once again to the book's title, A Ninja's Guide to Practical Jokes, by Pranking Tetsuya. Passing the book along the table for the other ninja to look at, he sent his oft-times rival an odd look. This book being in Naruto's hands holds disturbing implications. If some part of his learning comes from that book, then we must be prepared for some greater horror that is to come. Indeed, Danzo replied, returning the odd gaze with a steady one. I have checked, and he has completed the tasks listed within. Every single one. Uzumaki is now obligated by the book's opening agreement. He must somehow top the pranking. This comment drew the attention of everyone in the room, except for Shikaku and his teammates, who were looking through the book together muttering about the training strategies within. The so-called guide never listed a single practical joke, only techniques which could be used in such a way. It was up to the reader to test their imaginations and skills to find a way to use the techniques. It was considered required reading, and discouraged as training, by any person in either espionage or anti-infiltration within most of the villages within the elemental kingdoms. And due to some villages' policies of destroying any copy outside of military control, they were rather rare. A not unreasonable concern, since many of the techniques listed within were well within the range of civilian use. I have little doubt that he has decided that his ultimate act should be used in celebration of his graduation. Danzo continued, and as I doubt our intentions have changed with that information, I have devised a plan. It will solve our graduation situation, as well as grant us some measure of preemptive restitution for whatever it is Uzumaki comes up with. As Danzo illustrated his idea in exacting detail, Sarutobi was torn between horror and a bubbling feeling he vaguely recognized as akin to retribution. As he watched the grins form on the faces of his council, he knew he should feel appalled, but feeling the smile on his own, he knew it would be hypocritical. After Danzo's explanation was complete, and the orders given in regards to the ninja duties for the following day, Sarutobi and Danzo were left alone in the council chambers. The two stood staring out the window at the setting sun, silent anticipation running wild in eagerness for the following day. They had both been young boys for their ceremony, and the feeling of awe and majesty possessed by the legendaries never faded. "I would like the book back, Danzo eventually said. "I would never have expected you to part with it in the first place," Sarutobi replied. "As I recall, you never let it leave your side, back in the day." Danzo grunted noncommittally. "I didn't plan to, but when you refused to let me train the boy as part of Root, and I learned of the abominable job being done by the academy, I had to act somehow. You know why I didn't give him to you? You should never have been allowed to turn those children into weapons in the first place. I'm just glad I managed to stop your recruiting for good before you managed to get that Tenten girl. Even if I couldn't stop you from acquiring the other boy earlier." The Hokage's voice quivered with anger at his perceived shortcoming. "I didn't get to train Tenten. As far as I'm concerned, that is neither here nor there." Danzo shrugged at the piercing glare Sarutobi leveled his way. He turned to look out the window again. "Honestly, you were right, in regards to Uzumaki, and possibly the rest of Root's members. It's true, we have done things, more things than even you know, that Konoha would never openly acknowledge as necessary. But Root's ninja are far weaker than they should be. They have no drive to excel, no determination of their own to help them succeed against all odds. In short, they have no will of fire. I can only imagine and fear what would have happened if a Jinchuriki like Uzumaki were to become like that. How long before the voice that he obeyed so completely started coming from within, rather than without? I will say it this once, and never again. You were correct, and I was wrong. Know that if you ever bring this moment up, I will deny it vehemently." As Sarutobi stared at his companion, wondering whether he should laugh or gloat, he received a further shock. In a swirl of black liquid, a Root agent appeared, already kneeling before Danzo. "Odajizushi-sen has been apprehended as ordered," the figure intoned solemnly. "Do you have any further orders, Gimpy-sama?" The Hokage sputtered at the look of long-suffering indignation on his rival's face. "How many times have I told you not to call me that?" he asked with a sigh. 187. "So stop calling me Gimpy," the boy's leader growled. "But Danzo-sama, you told me I should work on my socialization training, and the book I read said I should use the nicknames I choose regardless of the recipient's wishes. It stated that the name would eventually be recognized as a sign of affection." At this, Sarutobi lost his battle against laughter and had to brace himself on the window ledge, lest he lose his balance and fall into an undignified heap. Danzo-sama? Is Geriatric-sama okay?" Almost immediately the laughter choked off into a wheezing gasp. "No further orders," Danzo groaned. "You may leave." With a bow and another wave of ink, the peculiar boy was gone. "What was that about?" the Hokage managed to choke out, once his breathing stabilized. "That was the last child I managed to recruit for Root. Sometimes I wish you had stopped me earlier too." Ignoring the once again laughing man, Danzo strode from the room. 3 sharp cracks roused Naruto from his state of semi-asleep lethargy. As he groaned his way out of bed and to the door, he wondered why he was even bothering. 3 more insistent-sounding knocks convinced him that whoever it was wasn't planning to leave. Opening the door, he was surprised to see the sun riding low in the sky. An Anbu in an owl mask stood before him, silent and imposing, which seemed to be a rule for Anbu in uniform. Yes? How can I help you, Anbu-san?" Naruto asked nervously. "I can't have been out of it a whole day, right? I still have my grand prank to get done." "It is time," the Anbu intoned with an air of finality. Naruto's heart fell. Apparently his dreaded thoughts had been correct. Hanging his head, he spoke softly, "I'm ready." The Anbu eyed Naruto a moment, and then nodded. "Very well, I suggest you brace yourself." With those words, the Anbu placed his hand heavily on the boy's shoulder, and they vanished in a swirl of leaves. They reappeared and vanished a handful of times. Naruto suspected this was to keep the ceremony's location a secret, but he was too distracted to be impressed at the moment. When they finally stopped, they were in a large clearing in the forest. The ground was stripped bare of grass, and a large bonfire waited unlit before them. Naruto had seen this twice before, but had always been taken away before the fire was lit, or the legendary Pokemon had arrived. Standing before the bonfire were the Hokage, in his traditional robes, flanked by a large man in many bandages and the Hokage's teammates. The guy with the bandages hadn't been there before, but Naruto figured he had a role that wasn't always needed. Maybe he was a seal master? Naruto shivered at the implications of that thought, but tried to hide it behind his typical facade. Naruto strode over to the area where he knew they would be asked to wait. There were a few students milling around, with their attending Anbu not far away. He moved to the edge of the clearing and rested against one of the trees. The physical support felt nice at the moment. One by one the remaining students arrived, demonstrating varying degrees of discomfort upon arrival. Shunshin wasn't too bad a way to travel for the user, but passengers tended to take it a bit harder. Civilians had an especially tough time of it, since their chakra was too underdeveloped to aid them in recovery. Naruto had an advantage among the students in that he was frequently dragged to the Hokage that way by angry jounin. Eventually, all the students had arrived and the captain in charge of the escorting Anbu reported so to the Hokage, as the students were guided to their assigned position by their guards. Clearing his throat, the Hokage called for attention. "I welcome you all to this most prestigious of ceremonies," he began. "We stand here, in the place chosen by the voice of Arceus itself in the land of fire, to speak with it and move on to the next stage in your lives as ninja. When Dragon-san calls your name, come forward, present your Arceus plate, and move to the area past him to await the next phase. If for any reason you lack a plate, move to the area you arrived in, and you will be given a second chance in a few months. After we determine the reason for your lack and correct it." With that said, the Sandaime nodded to the Anbu captain and stepped back to his original position. "Shino Abirame," began the masked man in a voice that rang like a bell through the clearing. As the man continued through the list, the students stepped up and either presented their plate in exchange for a headband, or tried to explain away their lack of one. No excuse was accepted, and no argument considered, as they were sent to their waiting areas. It was some consolation that there were apparently more who believed they had misplaced their plates somehow than those who had retained them, but it was small solace indeed. The clearing was silent aside from the captain's calls and some quiet grumbling from the area where the plateless stood. Naruto stood stock still as the calls passed from Uchiha to Yamanaka, completely skipping him. He wondered at it, but decided he was being left for last. Last in class, last in life, last to be called. It was kinda poetic in a twisted sense. The list reached its end just as the sun began to set among the western mountains, with only Naruto and the other failing students remaining. The dragon-faced Anbu turned and saluted the Hokage, speaking a few words too quiet and muffled to be caught. Once more the Hokage stepped forward. "To those of you who failed the exams and were not issued a plate, I apologize for summoning you so late. It is my belief that by seeing this place, your desire to come back next year and see it through to the end will become that much greater. You will now be returned back to your homes by the Anbu who escorted you here, with one exception. Naruto Uzumaki, please step forward." Gulping loudly, and trying to lock his emotions as deeply as possible, Naruto strode up to the Hokage and bowed silently. Beside him, the owl-masked Anbu stood rigidly at attention. "Naruto Uzumaki," the Hokage intoned gravely. "You have taken, and failed the final exam 3 times. That is the maximum allowance permitted within Konohagakure. Do you understand this?" Sweating heavily, Naruto nodded, trying to ignore the snickers he heard around him, despite how swiftly they were silenced by the Anbu's presence. "I understand, Hokage-sama." "Then you know that you will not be returning to the academy next year. Have you anything to say in contest to this ruling?" Sarutobi looked upon Naruto softly, willing to hear anything the oft-wronged boy would say. Naruto, for his part, considered trying to explain as he did the other night, so that the people around would know he wasn't a complete failure. But some aspects of that story could damage Konoha more than he was willing to commit to. How could the students trust their teachers after learning one had been a traitor? How could they respect their leader after learning he could be taken out by a naked girl? What would enemy villages do if they learned of such a potential weakness? No, Naruto would act as a ninja should, even if it cost him the opportunity to become one. "I have nothing to say," he replied solemnly. Sarutobi nodded sadly and looked to the tall Anbu beside him. "Owl-san, you know what to do." Naruto felt the hand grip onto his shoulder again and squeezed slightly, as if in warning or comfort. Almost immediately he felt the disorientation of multiple rapid shunshins. When they stopped, he stood with his eyes closed, trying to prevent the tears he knew would come if he relaxed his control for a moment. But something wasn't right. He didn't smell the antiseptic scent of a hospital, or the musty emptiness of odors that seemed to exist within the buildings dedicated to forbidden and closely guarded knowledge such as he would expect a seal master's headquarters to be. And the murmuring he was hearing seemed surprised, not what he would expect from a group who must be expecting him. Bracing himself, he forced his eyes to open slightly. What he saw made them shoot open entirely and his jaw to drop. He looked around himself to see the full graduates staring from around him. Sakura and Ino had ceased their bickering, and Kiba had actually fallen to the ground in surprise. Sasuke blinked at him, but it was Shikamaru's bored yawn that snapped him out of his daze. Intentionally unnoticed, Hinata hid behind the silently supportive Shino, tears of joy flowing from her opalescent eyes. Snapping his head around so fast the joints popped like bubble wrap, he stared at the Hokage and his companions, all wearing matching smirks. What? Was all he could croak out. Naruto Uzumaki, the Sandaime began in a tone of utter seriousness. For actions above and beyond the call of duty or rank, including the defeat and capture of a Chunin rank traitor, retrieval of restricted knowledge from said traitor, and saving the life of a fellow ninja, I, Sarutobi Hiruzen, Sandaime Hokage of Konohagakure, with the full support of the Ninja Council, hereby grant you a field promotion to the rank of Genin of Konoha. Please present the plate you acquired, in exchange for your headband. Shocked into silence, Naruto could only reach into his equipment pouch, belatedly remembering that he had forgotten to collect it from its hiding spot. Just as the silence began to grow uncomfortably long, he felt the unusual texture of the item on his fingers. Pulling it from his pouch, he was confronted with an image of a glaring horse-like creature with a large spiked ring circling its middle. The words "You shall pass" were emblazoned across it, though they faded so quickly that only Naruto and the Anbu beside him saw it. As Naruto offered the item to the Hokage, the old man refused it. The honor of presenting you with your headband was requested by another, he explained. As the owl-masked Anbu stepped around and knelt before Naruto, he removed his mask and clipped it onto his belt. The smiling face of Irika Yumino was revealed beneath. Sorry Naruto, he apologized, but I was ordered not to warn you about their plan. He traded the plate for a headband from his own pouch. Gotta admit though, it was a pretty good trick, huh? That finally broke through the boy's surprise. The idea of it. Him. The prank master of Konoha. He got tricked by a bunch of old people. As he smiled a grin fit for a madman, he agreed, yeah, it was a pretty good trick. But you haven't seen anything yet. He chuckled darkly a few times before the glint of metal caught his eye, and he found himself staring at his new headband. His headband, he was a ninja. The joy that phrase incited within him was only surpassed by the knowledge that soon he would get his Pokemon ally, and he knew that would be the greatest moment of his life. His silent celebration was interrupted by a loud and angry voice yelling from the group of plateless passing students. Hey! How come he gets to be a ninja? That loser didn't even pass the damn tests! Shouted Alakazoom, the son of a wealthy tradesman. He was one of the more arrogant civilian students. Instead, I'm stuck over here because that stupid piece of metal disappeared. Sarutobi gestured to stop the Anbu who was moving towards the disruptive boy. You say your plate disappeared? He asked. Do you happen to know why so many vanished without a trace? It is because you, like the others with you, chose not to honor your commitment to Arceus. And so Arceus chose not to honor his commitment to you. He controls every plate. They are as much a part of him as your own limbs are a part of you. In his understanding of the ways of humans, he offers a second opportunity. You will spend the next few months strengthening your own understanding of our Pokemon allies, and at the end of that time you are still deemed unacceptable, you will be consigned to the life of a Hyderainen. There is no third attempt, so I suggest you take this seriously. Are you telling me some stupid animal screwed me over? The livid boy continued. What the hell does it know? Just gimme my damn pet, and I'll show you how strong a ninja I can really be. The ranting was ended by a flash of heat as the stacked wood in the clearing erupted into a column of flames that rose far into the air, passing beyond even the trees surrounding the clearing. A resounding voice roared through the forest, shocking almost everyone with its intensity. Pet? Animal? You impudent child! We have watched your human civilizations rise and crumble into ruins. We have seen lifetimes such as yours pass between one breath and the next. We live existences beyond your grandest imaginings. And yet you dare to think us of a kind with your lowest of beasts? As the echoes faded into the distance, the flames died to normal heights and revealed an image even the most jaded of humans would not believe to be purely animal. Standing over the bonfire was the largest bird anyone there had ever seen, long-necked and slim-bodied. Its flaming crest was level with the towering trees, and its long pointed beak looked easily up to the task of impaling any number of the trembling students. Its wings and tail feathers were spread slightly, and tongues of flame flickered along them endlessly. It had long four-clawed feet that held its body high enough that even the tallest human there would have had to leap to so much as graze its belly with their fingers. And it was glaring at Ataka with the full force of its fiery soul. Well, human? Dare you speak such blasphemies to my face? It challenged. Those few who hadn't moved away the second the fire erupted, now abandoned the unlucky target of Molter's ire with a speed that would have made even the Yondaime proud. The target of the legendary bird of fire's wrath himself fell away into a dead faint. Thus satisfied, the giant Pokemon fluttered its feathers and repositioned itself in a pose of regal tolerance, apparently resolved to wait until the humans settled the rest of their concerns. Well, she's a little early, but let me introduce you all to molters, Sarutobi explained while the large bird bobbed her head in something resembling a bow. Those of you who had your plates revoked will meet her again in 3 months. I do hope you take this unexpected lesson in respect to heart. You will now be escorted to your homes. As they waited for the clearing to be emptied of unnecessary people, most of those remaining gazed with unhidden awe at molters. Naruto, of course, strode right up to the imposing being. Hey! He called up to it, also gaining the attention of everyone else nearby. Are you gonna be my Pokemon? 'Cause that would be really cool. When he only got blinked at in response, he decided to continue. You're really big, so I bet that means you're strong too, huh? I bet you can do more fire stuff than Sasuke Team 2. And best of all, you're orange. Orange is the coolest color, I bet you think so too, right? I know you probably got a lot of giant Pokemon things to do, but we could work together real good. I know you protect the land of fire, and that's gonna be my job too. I'm gonna be Hokage someday. Databeo. About this time Iruka grabbed Naruto and dragged him away, apologizing profusely the whole while. This one is rather strange, Molters thought to Arceus. That he is, Arceus agreed in the same manner. But then, many humans would say the same about us. May I ask why you reacted to the other one as strongly as you did? Humph, lousy brat's lucky I didn't burn him, acting like that. Humans just need to be reminded of the meaning of respect once in a while. He may be an oddball, but at least the loud blonde one appreciates beauty. Or at least the color orange, was Arceus' smug reply. After a short while, the Umbu ordered their charges to take positions around the bonfire. The Hokage, with his companions in the Umbu, then moved away from the circle, leaving the ninja to be alone with the majestic legendary. Once they had settled, she began to speak once more. You who remain have been accepted by Arceus, God among Pokemon. Now the task which befalls me is to deliver the gift of alliance as agreed within our age-old pact. Know that the choices you have made, the paths you have walked, have led you to this day. Remain true to yourselves, and to your allies, and we of Pokekind will always remain beside you. But know also, that just as we remember and honor our allies, so too do we remember our enemies. Harm our kindred only when absolutely necessary, and never seek to enslave another living being. Remember these rules, and remember that we are always watching. Its speech complete, the firebird swept its wings around itself, and released a wave of flame that flowed around and over the seated children. As one they flinched away, expecting searing heat, but instead feeling warmth as if from a clear summer day. When they could bring themselves to look back in the bonfire's direction, the giant bird was gone. But between each of them and the still flickering fire lay an egg. As each reached forward to grasp the gift that would become their future allies, they flinched again as the first touch produced a burning sensation within them. The runes of connection searing themselves in an unknown script and impervious ink on the skin of their forearm. Once the pain ebbed and the elation of finally receiving the last mark identifying them as full-fledged ninja waned, they lifted the eggs carefully. The solemn mood that permeated the group was almost oppressive in its intensity until it was shattered by an indignant shout. Hey! How come the team gets an orange one? What if Naruto Pokemon partner was Arceus? And thanks for watching my video till the end.